Part 34. The Rebirth of Space, the Lucky Girl from a Farm Family. Author, He Would Fire Every. Chapter 331. Chapter 331 Dare to Act and Act Bravely. Gu Huayu raised the curtains and looked over, and saw the tall Ryuan walking over. Gu Huayu unconsciously looked past Ryuan and looked behind him. 2 or 3 feet away from Ryuan, she saw that familiar figure standing firmly beside the carriage, her cloak fluttering in the wind. She didn't know how long had he stood in the cold wind. The anger in my heart disappeared the moment I saw him. Seeing Gu Huayu lift the curtains, Ryuan bowed her hands and said, "Hello, princess." Ryuan's greeting drew Gu Huayu's gaze back, and she asked with a smile, "Ryuan is back in Beijing? Are you okay?" Ryuan leaned forward and said, "Thanks to the princess, everything is fine, little one." Gu Huayu asked, "Why don't you go into the house now that you're here? Have you been waiting for a long time?" Soon, after waiting for more than an hour, the prince said that he was waiting for the princess outside, so I will wait here with the prince. Hearing that they had been waiting for more than an hour, Gu Huayu cursed in her heart, "It's not like this fool can't get into the house, so why didn't he wait inside?" Gu Huayu got down from the car and said to Ryuan, "Follow King Yu into the house to have a cup of tea to get rid of the cold." Ryuan wanted to say no, but King Yu said to him first, "Brother Ryuan, I haven't seen you for a long time. Let's come in and have a cup of tea." Ryuan turned around and looked towards the carriage, "Your Majesty." Qin Dynasty waved his hand and motioned for him to follow Qing Yu. Gu Huayu stood there and watched King Qin walking towards her. Without waiting for King Qin to approach, Gu Huayu said, "Frost in the cold, King Qin does not accompany your heart, what to do here?" As soon as the words came out of her mouth, Gu Huayu was shocked by her jealous words. "I cursed myself for being pretentious. I was obviously very happy when I saw the king of Qin, but I couldn't help but say some duplicitous and bitter words." King Qin looked at the jealous little girl and said in confusion, "Little guy, are you still angry?" Gu Huayu turned her head to the side, snorted and ignored him. King Qin turned to Gu Huayu, lowered his head and smiled at her, "My little guy looks so good even when he is angry." As he spoke, King Qin raised his hand to scratch Gu Huayu's nose, smiling with an endearing look on his face. Gu Huayu rolled her eyes at him, took another step to the side, and said angrily, "You're angry. Don't provoke me." His mouth speaks harsh words, but his eyes betray him. The king of Qin stood up straight, raised his hand to take Gu Huayu into his arms, and said gently, "Stop being angry, you little one." Gu Huayu swayed from side to side, trying to move away King Qin's hand. "You are thinking of treating other women well, why shouldn't I be angry?" King Qin hugged Gu Huayu tightly, lowered his head and whispered to her, "If you give me a daughter in the future, should I treat her well?" Gu Huayu stopped struggling, turned to look at King Qin, and asked stupidly, "Is it true that the other woman you mentioned is our daughter?" King Qin stared at Gu Huayu and asked, "What else? Who do you think you are?" Gu Huayu lost her temper, feeling that she had been angry for half a day in vain. Gu Huayu raised her hands and put her arms around King Qin's waist, complaining, "Then why didn't you make it clear? You made me angry all afternoon." King Qin lowered his head and pressed Gu Huayu's forehead, "Little guy, before I finished speaking, you just ignored me and rushed out angrily. I chased you out without even seeing your figure. You still blame me. I feel aggrieved. How pitiful it is to stand in the cold wind and wait for you for more than an hour, feeling cold and hungry." Gu Huayu leaned into King Qin's arms and said coquettishly, "I'm sorry, I was wrong. I won't do this again next time. Can Qinjian forgive me? I'll make delicious food for you another day." King Qin looked down at the little guy in his arms. At this moment, Gu Huayu looked very much like the cat that Ye Mingjin raised. Mild and well behaved. King Qin asked in a low voice, I'm still hungry now. Gu Huayu's stomach growled at the right time. She smiled sheepishly and said, just in time, I'm hungry too. Let's go out to eat? King Qin shook his head, I want to eat the same kind of skewers as last time. Okay, let's make arrangements. How about we enter through the side door and let Lonicera prepare it? King Qin nodded, okay. The two of them entered Gu Huayu's yard through the side door. Landong heard the noise and came out of the house. When he saw the two people coming in hand, he went forward and bowed his knees to salute. Gu Huayu gave some instructions to Liao Dong, and Liao Dong turned around and went to the kitchen. Gu Huayu hung up the cloak that King Qin had taken off and said, I don't have anyone to serve me here. Go and wash yourself. King Qin took Gu Huayu's hand and walked to the bathroom. Let's go together, I'll take care of you. Gu Huayu let King Qin lead him to the bathroom, watched him pour water, test the water temperature, and then put her hand into the copper basin. While King Qin was washing her hands, Gu Huayu gently scratched King Qin's palm. King Qin looked up at her, and Gu Huayu winked at him playfully. There was mischief in her smart eyes, which made King Qin confused. King Qin said to Gu Huayu, Xiao, let me tell you something. Gu Huayu asked, what's the matter? Get closer. Gu Huayu leaned her head obediently. King Qin came close to Gu Huayu's ear, took her earlobe in his mouth, and bit it gently. Gu Huayu's face instantly turned red and her body froze in place, not daring to move. King Qin quickly let go of his mouth and continued to wash Gu Huayu's hands. After a while, Gu Huayu came to her senses, took out her hand and ran away. I've finished washing, let's go change clothes. King Qin looked at Gu Huayu, who was leaving quickly, and pursed the corners of his mouth. Gu Huayu changed her clothes and came out. She saw King Qin sitting on the soft couch in nuance, so he walked to the brocade stool opposite. When King Qin saw Gu Huayu coming out, he patted the seat next to him and said, little guy, sit here. Gu Huayu hesitated for a moment, then obediently walked to King Qin and sat down, warning, don't bite my earlobe again. King Qin put Gu Huayu in his arms, lowered his head and kissed her. Gu Huayu wanted to speak, but her mouth was blocked and she couldn't make a sound. Gu Huayu had already forgotten her protest after a while of talking about the city's strategy. After a while, King Qin let go of Gu Huayu and asked, little guy, where did you go this afternoon? Gu Huayu replied truthfully, I went to Baekangmen to look for Li Er. At this point, Gu Huayu sat up straight and told the king of Qin about the Su family. King Qin perked up after hearing this. He was really worried about how to break through the current predicament, but he didn't expect that the incident of Sunan Silver Tower would lead to new clues. Said, at that time, Wang Xiang was just a minister of the Ministry of Personnel, a third-rank official, which was almost the same as the official rank of Lu Fuyin. Lu Ruiyi is willing to cover up for the Wang family. It can only be said that the two families have a close relationship, and Lu Ruiyi is Prince Duan's person. Where is the king? Gu Huayu nodded, I thought so too. What role did the prime minister play in that palace incident? Did he have any hand in the tragedy in my family? When Gu Huayu said this, she raised her right hand and threw the silver needle in her hand towards the opposite pillar. 5 silver needles were inserted into the pillar in a line. Gu Huayu stood up, walked to the pillar, and took off the silver needle. King Qin said, if it is really his handiwork, we will let him repay the debt with blood. Gu Huayu gritted her teeth and said, yes, I want to settle the old and new accounts together. Lonicera came in with Liwa and Begonia to bring food. Gu Huayu said, send some food to the outer courtyard. King Yu and the others didn't eat either. Landong replied, go back to the princess, I have already sent it over. Gu Huayu said, send more, the prince's secret guards won't eat either. Lonicera bent her knees and bowed. After dinner, King Qin and Gu Huayu drank 2 cups of tea together before getting up and leaving. Before leaving, King Qin said to Gu Huayu, I will arrange for someone to guard Sujin's side, so you don't have to worry. Okay, Gu Huayu sent King Qin away, turned around and went to the outer courtyard, and asked Sui-er to arrange for people to keep an eye on the Prime Minister's mansion. Sui-er replied, back to the princess, I am worried that the Prime Minister Wang's mansion will come to cause trouble, so I have sent people to keep an eye on it. The third day of the winter is the wedding day of the King Xian and Miss Wang San. Everyone in the Prime Minister Wang's mansion is here. I'm busy with Miss Wang's coming out of the cabinet. Princess, Wang Qin came over. Gu Huayu turned around and looked over, Aunt Wang, what is that in your hand? Wang Qin smiled and said, a letter from Miss Suimei of the Wang mansion to the princess. Oh, is someone coming to Wang's house today? Wang Qin shook her head, no one is visiting the Wang mansion. This afternoon, on the order of the old lady, I went to the Wang mansion to deliver a message, inviting Mrs. Fang and Mrs. Su to attend the princess's hairpin ceremony, and I took the opportunity to send a message to Fang. The old lady sent some elixirs. Mrs. Fang stayed with me to have tea. When I left, the maid next to Miss Suimei gave me a letter, asking me to deliver it to the princess. Gu Huayu took the letter and asked, what happened to Wang's house? Wang Qin smiled and said, nothing happened in Wang's house. Gu Huayu said, okay, why did Wang Suimei ask you to send me a message? Wang Qin said mysteriously while walking with Gu Huayu to the study, when I was going down, Mrs. Su did not show up, but at the tip of my lower ear, I heard the servants of the Wang family talking. Gu Huayu turned her head and looked at Wang Qin and asked, what did Aunt Wang hear? Wang Qin said, my servant said that Mrs. Su returned to Yong'an Marquis Mansion this morning, and the result, guess, princess, what was the result? Gu Huayu smiled and asked, no guess, tell me, what happened? Wang Qin said, as a result, Mrs. Su bumped into Mrs. Zhang from Privy Wang's residence and brought a matchmaker to the Yong'an Marquis residence to propose marriage. Mrs. Zhang proposed to marry Suzilian, the second daughter of the Yong'an Marquis mansion, for her son Huang Xingyi. Mrs. Su was so angry that she made a scene at Yong'an Marquis. It was the eldest man of the Wang family who came to persuade her to take her back to the house. The same goes for the Huang mansion. It is simply too unethical. Their family status is not low. Is the lady from aristocratic family in the capital gone? How could you do such a disgraceful thing? The front leg had just gone to Wang's mansion to cancel the engagement, and the back leg had gone to Yong'an Ho's mansion to propose marriage. Yong'an Haofu is Miss Suimei's maternal family. Miss Sui-er is Miss Suimei's cousin. How could they do it? Gu Huayu thought about how Mrs. Shen and the eldest princess of Qing'an were stealing in the Shi mansion. She smiled dryly and said, the second young lady of the Su family and the eldest son of the Huang family have been secretly sleeping in Chenkang for a long time. Unfortunately, the eldest son of the Huang family has an engagement with Wang Suimei, so she can't being together blatantly. Wang Qin suddenly thought of something and asked, so, the fact that Miss Suimei came to Huayu Pavilion to cause trouble for our second young lady is a result of the second young lady of the Yong'an Marquis mansion. Gu Huayu nodded, yes, it should be a game set up by Mr. Huang and Miss Su second. They knew Wang Suimei's temperament and encouraged her to come to her second sister's home to cause trouble, and then made things worse. If Wang Suimei's reputation for jealousy spreads, Mrs. Shen will definitely cancel the marriage. Wang Qin was annoyed, I'm sorry, our second young lady was innocently implicated and became in their disgusting game. Gu Huayu smiled and said, in their eyes, I have no father, no mother, no one to rely on, and I only have the title of princess. I am easy to bully. Then they have made the wrong decision. We, the princess, have always relied on others, rather than relying on other people's masters, Wang Qin said. Gu Huayu said, I don't blame them, it's because they don't understand me. After these few days of busy work, when we have time to look back, let's go meet Mr. Huang and Miss Suer and settle this account with them. Gu Huayu took out the letter written by Wang Suimei and saw a line of words written on the letter stained with tears. Princess, I realize that I have made a mistake, and I will come to you another day to apologize. The person who signed the petition was Wang Suimei. Gu Huayu put away the letter and said, Ms. Wang is someone who knows her mistakes and is willing to admit them. She is a person who dares to take responsibility. Perhaps both of them were named Wang, and Wang Qin had a very good impression of Wang Shilang's family. Wang Qin nodded and said, Boss Wang Shilang and Mrs. Fang are excellent people, and the descendants they teach will naturally be good. At this moment in the Wang mansion, Wang Shilang and Mrs. Fang were sitting at the top. Mrs. Su was sitting on the left side, wiping tears from time to time, and her daughter-in-law, Mrs. Xing, was speaking warmly to the side. Wang Zhouquan sat on the right side and looked worriedly at Mrs. Su opposite. Wang Sueking sat next to Wang Zhouquan, looked at Mrs. Su and said, Mom, don't cry. Since they don't regard us as relatives and do such unflattering things, there will be no contact between the two houses from now on. If the mother-in-law misses her grandmother, her son will pick her up and come over to rest for a few days. Mrs. Su was angry and cried, They are my brothers and sisters-in-law, Mayer's uncle and aunt, how could they do such a thing? They also watched Meyer grow up. How could they bear to treat Meyer like this? Mrs. Fang advised, Don't be sad Huiyun, there is nothing to complain about. Marriage is destined by God. If you want to complain, just blame Sister Mei for not being destined to the boy from the Huang family. Xueqing, don't say anything about the two houses not going together. The old lady and Marquis Yong'an are Huiyun's biological parents, and they are also your grandfather and grandmother. From now on, when you need to go back to visit, you can go back to visit, respect your filial piety as you should, and just have a clear conscience. As for Sister Mei, after this experience, she also learned a lesson and gained a good memory. In my opinion, it is not a bad thing to learn something and gain wisdom. From now on, she will never let anyone lead her away. Moreover, it is a good thing to miss Huang Xingyi who has no Suimei in his heart. Wang Shilang nodded and said, That's the truth, you have to be more open-minded. This matter makes me angry when I think about it. In fact, we should be glad that this happened early. Sister Mei is not very young, so we should keep her for 2 more years. The mother-in-law tried to trick her daughter, but her parents-in-law not only did not blame her, but comforted her, which made Su Huiyun feel extremely guilty. He leaned over and said, Thank you, father, thank you mother, my daughter-in-law understands. My daughter-in-law just feels sad. End of this chapter. The Rebirth of Space, the lucky girl from a farm family. Author, he would fire every. Chapter 332. Chapter 332 Knowing the Blessing. Mrs. Fang looked at Su Huiyun and said, You are tired today, so go back and rest early. From the Sueking family, send your mother back to rest. After Mrs. Fang finished speaking, she turned to tell Mr. Xing. Ms. Xing leaned forward and said, Yes, Grandma. Seeing Mrs. Xing helping Mrs. Su out of the house, Mrs. Fang leaned back on her chair and sighed heavily. He turned to Wang Zhouquan and said, This matter is over. Looking back, you are not allowed to mention it in front of Huiyun, let alone blame her. Wang Zhouquan felt angry and said, The Yong'an Marquis mansion has indeed gone too far in this matter. Wang Sueking took over, Uncle, they have indeed gone too far. Sister Mei is their niece. Huang Mansion went to Wang Mansion to reject Mei's sister's marriage, and then went to Yong'an Marquis Mansion to propose marriage. Are all men in the world dead? They insisted on choosing the Huang family for Sister Lian. How will Suimei face Zelian in the future? How can anyone do things like this? Grandma, this is something that should not be mentioned. After this incident, my grandson will face people from the Yong'an Marquis mansion again, and he will feel very worried and panicked. Wang Suiheng looked at Mrs. Fang and said, Grandma, brother is right, Huang Mansion and Yong'an Marquis Mansion are too bullying. Mrs. Fang looked at Wang Suiking, then at Wang Suiheng, then looked around at the other grandchildren and asked, which of you has anything else to say? Wang Suifeng said, Grandma, my grandson also thinks that the Yong'an Marquis Mansion is too much. Mrs. Fang asked solemnly, through this matter, this is all you see. Everyone in the room looked at each other, not understanding what Mrs. Fang meant for a moment. Wang Shilang looked at the bewildered descendants, sighed slightly, and said, you guys, you still have a lot to learn. Wang Suiking leaned forward and said, my grandson is stupid, please tell me from your grandparents. Mrs. Fang looked at Wang Suiking and said, as the eldest grandson of the Wang family and Suimei's brother, from Suimei's accident to today, in addition to caring about Suimei like an old woman, you also care about Suimei. What did Mei do? Wang Suiking was unable to answer the questions asked by Mrs. Fang. He did nothing except go through Kainyuan to visit Suimei every day. Mrs. Fang moved her eyes away from Wang Suiking and focused on the other grandchildren. What about you? What have you done for Suimei? Everyone lowered their heads one after another, too ashamed to say anything. The air in the room seemed to have frozen, and it was so quiet that one could hear Mrs. Fang's shortness of breath. A moment later, Mrs. Fang's voice sounded again. Suimei impulsively led people to Daowen Street to cause trouble, and fell into a trap carefully laid by others. One by one, as Suimei's brother, after so many days, have any of you checked on Suimei? The head of the Wang brothers is lower than the other. After what happened today, you think that the Yong'an Marquis Mansion has gone too far, and the Huang Mansion has gone too far. They bullied others too much, and they bullied them. What can you do? What do you dare to do? I have loved Suimei since childhood. She was plotted against, despised by others, and looked down upon. My heart hurts as if someone had stabbed her with a knife, which is even worse than when I myself was bullied. But, is it useful to be sad? The Huang Mansion just dislikes Suimei and looks down on Suimei. The Yong'an Marquis Mansion is plotting against us Suimei. What can we do? Going to Yong'an Ho Mansion to make trouble? Going to Huang Mansion to cause trouble? Wouldn't that mean sending your face over and being beaten again? Have you ever thought about it? Why do others dare to bully Suimei and dislike Suimei? It's because you are all too incompetent. Each of you are Suimei's brothers, and you are Suimei's father. Mrs. Fang pointed from Wang Suizong by the door to Wang Zhouquan, paused, and continued with a stern face, remember today's humiliation. You are the sons of the Wang family, and you have the responsibility and obligation to support the Wang family. You are the supporter and backing of the Wang family's daughter. Only if you are strong enough, the daughter of the Wang family will not be looked down upon and disliked by others, do you understand? When talking about the latter part, Mrs. Fang's voice was choked with tears and her eyes were filled with tears. The Wang family man immediately knelt on the ground. Wang Suiking lowered his head and promised, Grandma, don't worry. From today on, my grandson will work hard, study hard, and take it as his own responsibility to revitalize the Wang family. Other brothers followed Wang Suiking and swore an oath. Mrs. Fang looked at her descendants kneeling on the ground, raised her hand to wipe her tears, and after a moment, said, remember what you said today, only you work hard enough and stand high enough. In the future, your daughter will not be looked down upon by others. Zhouquan stayed, and everyone else went back. Wang Suiking took the lead in kowtowing to Mr. Wang and Mrs. Fang, and then exited the room. Wang Shilang handed the teacup to Mrs. Fang and said softly, drink some tea. Mrs. Fang took the teacup, lowered her head and took a sip of tea. Wang Shilang pointed to the seat next to him and said to Wang Zhouquan, sit down. Wang Zhouquan leaned forward and said, thank you, Father. When Wang Zhouquan sat down, Wang Shilang said, the most difficult thing about the marriage between Huang Mansion and Yong'an Marquis Mansion is Huiyun. As Huiyun's husband, you should be more considerate of her. Men should have a man's mind. Be more filial to your parents-in-law than before. Understand? Wang Zhouquan had already come to his senses after hearing what Mrs. Fang had just said. He leaned back and said, "Thank you, father and mother, for your teachings. My son has taken note of them." Wang Shilang continued, "This year the emperor's eldest son returns to the clan, the winter solstice worship, and the Wanchao festival next month are all very important to the emperor. You must do your job well and don't make any mistakes." Wang Zhouquan leaned forward and said, "My son has written it down. In addition to taking care of the official duties at hand, take time to familiarize yourself with the 6 ministries, and take a look at the criminal laws and criminal regulations." Seeing his father's solemn explanation, Wang Zhouquan noticed something sensitively. He looked up at his father and asked, "Dad, in the middle of the court?" Wang Shilang waved his hand to interrupt his son's words and said, "You just need to know some things in your heart, so that you can do the things at hand well." Wang Zhouquan bowed and said, "My son understands." Wang Shilang waved his hand, "Go and see Sister Mei first, and then go back and rest early." Wang Zhouquan bowed to say goodbye and turned around to go to the east wing. After her son left, Mrs. Fang looked at Shilang Wang and said, "Master, is there any chance Quaner can go up?" Wang Shilang said, "It's not clear yet. Quaner has the ability. As long as he does what he is doing well, there is always a chance to move up." Mrs. Fang nodded, "The master is right, I have a premonition that the capital will be troubled next." Having been married for many years, Wang Shilang has always admired his wife's vision, structure, and keenness in current affairs. "Madam, tell me what you think." Mrs. Fang said, "The emperor did not delve into the palace changes that year. It should be because the emperor's eldest son was living abroad. Now that the emperor's eldest son has returned to the clan, the emperor's heart is relieved. Next, the emperor will definitely take some action. This is one of them. Furthermore, the emperor's preference for the king of Qin made the prince who wanted to ascend to the throne feel in danger. The overt and covert struggles between the various forces would become fierce, and extraordinary things would happen frequently. Just like the quarrel between Princess Yanran and the third lady of the Wangxiang mansion, it was obviously just a dispute between little girls. Under normal circumstances, it was an ordinary thing. But, look, how many banks are involved now? Wang Shilang nodded, "Yes, after this incident, the superficial harmony among the princes was broken, and the overt and covert fighting became more and more intense." Mrs. Fang sighed and said, "Some people are too anxious. The emperor is in his prime, but it's just like this. I'm afraid it will be difficult for King Qin to take care of himself. Do we want to remind him?" Wang Shilang said, "Yes, some people are too ambitious. As for the king of Qin, we can just stand in the dark and guard silently as before." Mrs. Fang nodded, "Listen to the master. Back then, Shang Shuya helped the master without asking us for anything in return. We should protect the king of Qin, and we should do the same." Wang Shilang nodded, "Yes, Mr. Ye is better than me. He has knowledge and kindness." Mrs. Fang looked up at Minister Wang and asked, "Is the emperor going to investigate what happened back then?" Wang Shilang leaned on the regimental chair and turned his head to look at Mrs. Fang. "The emperor asked King Qin to go to the Ministry of Justice to be the consul, probably to investigate what happened back then." Mrs. Fang nodded slightly, "So that's it? It's fine. The emperor's arrangement is the best protection for King Qin. However, if this happens, some people may become anxious." Wang Shilang nodded and warned, "These days, I ask the children at home not to go out to socialize. If you have nothing to do, study hard at home. MRS Fang nodded in agreement. Yes, I will turn around and tell them. Wang Shilang stood up and said, Quaner should go back, let's go see Sister May. Sister May is too quiet today, I think it's abnormal. Old man Fang stood up and said, yes, I have also noticed it. Normally, Sister May would have cried to death if she knew what Yang and Haofu did. But today she is silent, which is really disappointing. Worried. The two of them went to the east wing. When the maid and the mother-in-law saw them, they hurriedly bowed their knees to greet them. Wang Suimei was about to stand up to greet her, but Mr. Fang stopped her and said, Sister May, please don't move. Wang Shilang said to his servants, you guys, step back. The maids and women bent their knees and stepped back one after another. Wang Shilang sat on the brocade stool beside the bed and asked Wang Suimei's physical condition. Wang Suimei answered one by one. MRS Fang saw that her granddaughter was a little restrained, so she took over the words. The doctor came to change Sister May's dressing this afternoon. He said that Sister May's wound healed well, faster than anyone else's wound he had ever seen. Wang Shilang smiled and said, Sister May is young and recovers quickly. After going through this, Sister May will have a better memory. Don't be reckless when encountering problems in the future. Wang Shilang praised him and brought the topic back to business. Wang Suimei leaned forward and said, May realizes her mistake. Wang Shilang looked at Pinglan Wuobo's granddaughter and asked, tell me, grandfather, where did you go wrong? Wang Suimei's eyelids drooped slightly and she said, Mayor shouldn't just listen to others and bring people to her door to cause trouble without asking anything. Seeing Wang Suimei's indifferent expression, MRS Fang asked, Sister May, did you know about MRS Su and Mr. Huang? Wang Suimei lowered her head and hid the sadness in her eyes. Go back to Grandma, Mayor knew about it 2 days ago. MRS Fang and Wang Shilang looked at each other and asked, you have been recovering in the house for the past 2 days and have not gone out. How do you know? Wang Suimei raised her head to look at MRS Jian Fang, then lowered her head and said truthfully, after my accident, neither the princess nor my cousin came to visit me. I wanted to talk to them, so I asked Li Shuang to invite the princess and cousin. Li Shuang first went to the Yong'an Marquis mansion. The concierge told Li Shuang that his second cousin had gone to the eldest princess's mansion, so Li Shuang went to the eldest princess's mansion. Because I usually take Li Shuang to and from the eldest princess's mansion, the servants in the eldest princess's mansion all know Li Shuang and told Li Shuang that Princess Li Shuang and her second cousin were in the garden, so Li Shuang went to look for them on his own. In the garden of the eldest princess's mansion, Li Shuang heard the conversation between her second cousin and the princess. That day, the second cousin went to the princess to ask the princess to come forward and mediate the marriage between the Huang mansion and the Yong'an Marquis mansion. After Li Shuang came back and told Meyer realized that she was so stupid that she was being played around with. Meyer has embarrassed the family. Meyer is sorry for the teachings of her grandparents. After finishing speaking, Wang Suimei bowed to Wang Shilang and MRS Fang to apologize. MRS Fang held Wang Suimei's hand and said comfortingly, people have to go through things to grow up. There is nothing to be ashamed of. Grandma is also responsible for such an incident. You don't need to apologize to us. Wang Suimei raised her head to look at MRS Fang and asked timidly, Mayor has caused so much trouble for the family and lost all the family's savings. Grandpa and Grandma don't blame Mayor. Wang Shilang said, if you lose all your savings, you can save more. You can know people through this incident, learn lessons from them, and understand some principles, which is better than anything else. Grandpa. Wang Shilang raised his hand to wipe away Wang Suimei's tears and said warmly, don't cry. Tell Grandpa, what did you think after knowing this? Or, what did you understand through this incident? Grandpa wants to hear your opinion idea. Wang Suimei said with red eyes. After listening to Li Shuang's story that day, Meyer collapsed and felt so angry that she wanted to hit someone. That night, Meyer cried for a long time. The next day, my brother and sister-in-law came to see Meyer. The sister-in-law saw that Meyer's eyes were red and swollen, so she talked to Meyer for a long time. After her sister-in-law left, Meyer thought a lot. In Wang Mansion, Meyer received the love and care of her family. Even if Meyer made a big mistake, her family did not give up on Meyer. In other families, if the young lady in the house had made a mistake like Meyer, she would have been sent to the family temple and would be accompanied by the Green Lantern and the ancient Buddha for the rest of her life. Or, being rewarded with a piece of white silk, ending your life. As for Meyer, her grandparents not only did not give up on Meyer, they also took Meyer to Kainyuan and stayed with Meyer with endless love and patience, waiting for Meyer to grow up and become sensible. Meyer was born into the Wang family and could be the granddaughter of her grandparents. It was Meyer's blessing. Meyer should know her blessings, and even more cherish them. After Meyer recovers from her injuries, Meyer wants to stay with her grandmother, learn how to treat others, and become an outstanding descendant of the Wang family like her brothers. After hearing what Wang Suimei said, Ms. Fang raised her hand to wipe the corners of her eyes and said, "My daughter has grown up and is sensible." Wang Suimei felt even more guilty when she saw Ms. Fang crying. She leaned forward and said, "Grandma, Meyer knows she was wrong." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Rebirth of Space, the lucky girl from a farm family. Author, he would fire every. Chapter 333. Chapter 333 Lively. On the first day of winter, in Wutong Lane, Ms. Wang and Wang Qin walked through the ceremony with Hengxia, Chaoyang, Begonia, and Liwa, repeatedly telling everyone where to stand and what to do during the ceremony. King Zhu walked over hurriedly, leaned down, and said, "Madam, the palace has handed over a notice. Today, concubine Li will come to watch the ceremony." Speaking, King Zhu leaned over and presented the post. Ms. Wang looked at King Zhu in shock and asked in disbelief, "Who do you think is coming to watch the ceremony?" King Zhu said, "Empress Li Fei." Ms. Wang stepped forward to take the post, opened it and read it quickly. After confirming that it was indeed a greeting post from Empress Li Fei, she said to Wang Qin, "You watch them walk twice, and I will go find my mother to discuss the guest of honor." Wang Qin nodded and said, "Okay." Ms. Wang went to Nuan Pavilion. As soon as she entered the door, she said to Ms. Ping, "Madam, concubine Li will come to watch the ceremony." Ms. Ping asked in surprise, "The letter you just received?" Ms. Wang nodded, "Yes, it's the post someone from the palace just handed over." Speaking, Ms. Wang handed over the post. Mr. Ping lowered his head and looked at the post, and then said, "With so many distinguished people coming to watch the ceremony, the guest of honor must be changed. Because Gu Huayu has always said that the ceremony should be simple, and only invite relatives and friends who are close to come and sit and be witnesses. So Ms. Wang was decided to be the guest of honor." Ms. Wang frowned in worry and said, "Who should I invite to be the guest of honor?" Ms. Ping was also worried, "Who should I invite? It's too sudden to invite someone on top of me. It's not good to invite anyone. What's more, the status of the guest of honor should be high." Ms. Wang was at a loss what to do and rubbed her hands in a hurry. The guest of honor has not yet been decided, and the servant comes in with the post again. "Old madam, madam uncle, the Prince of Qi's mansion has handed over the post, and the Prince of Qi will come to watch the ceremony." Ms. Wang and Ms. Ping looked at each other quickly. Ms. Wang took the post from the servant and said, "I understand, go down." After the servants left, Ms. Wang asked, "Auntie, why is King Qi here too? I haven't heard Yan Ran mention King Qi before." Ms. Ping shook her head, "I don't know either, Noble people are coming one after another. Mrs. Wang nodded and said, yes, we can't be careless about today's haircut ceremony. Otherwise, I'll go look for Yan Ran and tell her, what does it mean to see Yan Ran? Ms. Ping said, forget it, Yan Ran is a little girl and has never experienced anything like this. Looking for her will only add to her troubles. Ms. Wang said, what should we do? Ms. Wang was so worried that she rubbed her hands and walked around the room. While circling, he said, all the ladies in the palace are here, who should I choose as the guest of honor? Who should I choose? Just when Ms. Wang was as anxious as an ant on a hot pot, a servant came in and said, old madam, someone from the Shi mansion has handed over a letter. The women of the Shi mansion are already on the way and will arrive soon. Ms. Ping was worried that Ms. Wang would be too busy, so she brought Princess Jinglian, Li Jing, and Shi Yamei over early to help. Ms. Ping said to Ms. Wang, go and greet Yingzi and the others first. Yingzi is out and about a lot, ask her to make an idea about who to invite as the guest of honor. Ms. Ping's words touched Ms. Wang's heart. Ms. Wang nodded repeatedly, okay, I'll go right away. Ms. Wang said goodbye to Ms. Ping and walked quickly to the door of the house. When she arrived at the gate, Shi's car just arrived. When Ms. Wang saw Ms. Ping, she immediately went up to her, took Ms. Ping's hand and said, Yingzi, I have something to discuss with you. Seeing Ms. Wang's anxious expression, Ms. Ping thought something serious had happened. Her heart sank and she hurriedly asked, what's wrong? What happened? Ms. Wang held Ms. Ping's hand tightly, took 2 steps to the side, and whispered, I don't have a daughter, and I haven't made a haircut ceremony yet. I haven't thought about many things well. The matter of the guest of honor has not been decided yet. Ms. Ping knew that this was Ms. Wang's humble words. How could anyone have not appointed the guest of honor when the banquet day comes? There must have been an emergency. Ms. Ping comforted her, sister-in-law, don't worry, tell me who you have invited today. Ms. Wang replied, there are not many people invited, except for my own family, it's just a few people who are close by. Your house, the house of Wang Shilang of the Ministry of Rites, the house of Princess Jing'an, the house of Grand Scholar Yang, the house of General Zhenqiu, the house of Prince Qin, and the house of Fang. There is also a message I received from Empress Li Fei in the palace this morning, and a message from Prince Qi's mansion. Both Empress Li Fei and Prince Qi will come to watch the ceremony. Ms. Ping knew that concubine Li came to watch the ceremony because Princess Jing'an came to watch the ceremony. Princess Jinglian was worried that Princess Jing'an would find fault, so she went to the palace to ask concubine Li to support Yan Ran. As for the fact that King Qi also came to watch the ceremony, Ms. Ping was a little surprised. Ms. Wang said, Yingzi, please help me think about who should be the guest of honor? I'm so anxious. Ms. Ping's mind was racing. Everyone watching the ceremony was more distinguished than the other. The status of the guest of honor could not be lowered. This was indeed a problem. Ms. Ping went through the guests in her mind, and when she thought of Duke Qinquo's palace, she had an idea and said, will Ms. Jean from Duke Qinquo's palace come? How about we invite Ms. Jean from Qinquo palace to be the guest of honor? Ms. Jean is the queen's mother and the emperor's mother-in-law, so her status is there. Ms. Wang's eyes lit up. Yes, this old lady is respected by the emperor. Looking at Daxing, who else has a higher status than her? Ms. Wang clapped her hands and said repeatedly, yes, why didn't I think of Ms. Jean? I will go and invite her myself right now. Ms. Ping quickly grabbed Ms. Wang and said, sister-in-law, there are many guests here today. You are the master and you have to stay in the house to relax. I will go and invite Ms. Jean. Ms. Wang was not polite either, Yingzi, I'm sorry to bother you. What are you being polite to me about as a family, Mrs. Ping said, turning around and getting in the car, heading to the Duke Chinquo's mansion. Princess Jinglian saw Madame Ping boarding the car and leaving, and asked, "Where are you going, madam?" Mrs. Wang told Princess Jinglian the reason. After hearing this, Princess Jinglian said, "Mrs. Jin is the guest of honor, so I will be the one to praise." Mrs. Wang thanked her gratefully, "Thank you, Princess." Princess Jinglian smiled and helped Mrs. Wang up, "Madam, you're welcome, we are a family and there is no need to see anyone outside." With the worrying problem solved, Mrs. Wang immediately felt refreshed and led Princess Jinglian and her entourage into the mansion. Mrs. Ping looked at Mrs. Wang and asked, "How is it? Are everything arranged?" Mrs. Wang walked over and whispered to Mrs. Ping. Mrs. Ping was relieved and turned to Princess Jinglian to thank her. Princess Jinglian chatted with Mrs. Ping for a while and asked, "Where is Yan Ran?" Mrs. Wang said, "Yan Ran is waiting quietly in the East Chamber. When it comes to haircut ceremony, after taking a bath, the hairdresser will put on his clothes and shoes and sit in the East Room to wait." Princess Jinglian turned to Li Jing and Shi Yamei and said, "You two help Madam receive the guests, and I'll go see Yan Ran." Li Jing nodded and said, "Princess, go quickly and tell Yan Ran the process arrangements so that she doesn't have to worry." Mrs. Wang called Hengxia and told her to take Princess Jinglian to the East Wing. Wan Xiaoshuang was chatting with Gu Huayu in the East Chamber. When she saw Princess Jinglian coming in, Wan Xiaoshuang greeted Princess Jinglian and said to Gu Huayu, "Xiao, you talk to the princess, and I will go to Xiaojuan's house to take a look." Gu Huayu nodded, "Go." When Gu Huayu learned that Princess Jinglian had praised her, she naturally expressed her gratitude. Princess Jinglian took Gu Huayu's hand and sat down, looking around. Gu Huayu saw it and asked Lonisara to take the people back. After Princess Jinglian and others retreated, she asked in a low voice, "Yan Ran, what did you name the elixir?" "Bai Fengdan, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell?" Gu Huayu asked. Princess Jinglian couldn't hide the joy on her face, "No discomfort. I took one pill the day you sent it to someone. After taking it for 2 days, I felt that the symptoms of cold hands and feet improved a lot. If you touch my hand, does it feel much warmer?" Gu Huayu shook Princess Jinglian's hand, nodded and said, "Well, it's a lot warmer today. Princess, sit tight and I'll take your pulse." "Okay." Princess Jinglian sat upright and put her hands on the armrests. After Gu Huayu checked her pulse, she said, "Princess insists on taking the elixir. Wait until the sunflower water comes to see if her health improves." "Okay, Yan Ran, thank you." The two of them were whispering about women in the house, and at this time, guests were arriving at the gate of Gu's mansion one after another. Mrs. Wang asked Li Jing to welcome Mrs. Fang and Mrs. Su from Wang Shilang's house into the house. Turning around, she saw the carriage from Princess Jingan's mansion approaching, and she hurriedly took Shi Yamei to greet her. After the ceremony, Mrs. Wang welcomed Princess Chang'an of Qing'an and walked in. Shi Yamei accompanied Princess Xiwen to talk. Princess Xiwen slowed down and looked around, "Isn't this house too small?" Shi Yamei didn't like Princess Xiwen's picky and arrogant look, so she said unceremoniously, "Yan Ran bought this house with her own money." At that time, her life experience had not yet been revealed, and she was not yet a princess, but she had the ability to buy this house in the capital. She was already much better than you and me. Princess Xiwen was about to snort and retort when a voice came from behind her, "Shi-san, where did you get here?" Shi Yamei turned around and saw Li Chao riding over. Princess Xiwen stopped and asked, "Miss Shi-san is familiar with Mr. Li?" Shi Yamei replied casually, "It's okay." Li Tao stood down from his horse, threw the reins and whipped to Quan Zi behind him, bowed his hands to Princess Xiwen, and then smiled mischievously at Shi Yamei, "When did you arrive?" Shi Yamei replied, "I just arrived a while ago, Why are you here too? Li Tao's face immediately fell. What are you talking about? Do you need a beating? Gu Xiao and Hairpin, how can I be absent from such an important day? Before Shi Yame could speak, Princess Xiwen spoke first. Princess Li Er is familiar with Princess Yan Ran. Li Tao glanced at Xiwen and replied calmly, it's not bad. Gu Chengliang and Gu Chenggui led the Gu family brothers to welcome him out. When they saw Li Tao, they raised their hands to Li Tao and said, hello, Mr. Li, please come to the house. Li Tao smiled, returned the gift with his hands, and said politely, you are so polite to come out to greet me. Gu Chenggui scratched his head in embarrassment and said sincerely, I don't know if Mr. Li has ever passed the government. As soon as Gu Chenggui's words came out, Gu Chengliang quickly turned him around. Shi Yame smiled and said, you have to change your habit of not submitting posts when you pass the government. Li Tao thought to himself, he still needs to submit a post when he comes to see Gu Xiao, what a joke. But he said, it's all my fault. When I'm happy, I forget everything. Then who are you two coming out to greet? Gu Chengliang leaned forward and said, the government has just received a letter. King Qi has come through the government. Let's come out to welcome him. Li Tao was stunned, leaned towards Shi Yame, and asked in a low voice, Xiao invited King Qi. Shi Yame said softly, I didn't hear Xiao say that King Qi should have come uninvited. Li Tao asked, what can we do? Who else did Xiao invite? Before Shi Yame could reply, Li Tao saw Ruan Chu on horseback and the carriage of Prince Jin's palace, and said, King Qin arrived first, let's see what's going on today. Shi Yame also saw the carriages and horses of Prince Jin's mansion, and nodded, yes, let's see what's going on today. After saying that, Shi Yame glanced at Princess Xiwen beside him. Back then when she was chasing Lu Ziqan all over the city, only the man in front of her came out to give her trouble. Gu Chengliang had never seen King Qi and was worried about how to receive King Qi. When he saw King Qin coming, he immediately had a backbone in his heart. Although King Qin is now the eldest son of the emperor, in the hearts of the Gu family, King Qin is the Mr. Lulu at that time, the man who took great care of the Gu family. Although Gu Chengliang only met King Qin a few times, in Gu Chengliang's heart, King Qin was no different from his own family. Seeing King Qin get out of the car, Gu Chengliang and Gu Chenggui went up to greet him, bowed their hands and bowed in greeting. King Qin waited for them to stand up, bowed his hands to them, and then introduced Ruan Chu and Ye Minghao to them. The brothers of the Gu family bowed towards Ruan Chu and Ye Minghao. Li Tao also came to pay homage to the king of Qin and others. Princess Xiwen followed Li Tao and came over to pay homage to King Qin. She called out in a sweet voice, hello, brother Qinjian. Hearing the soft voice, Shi Yame got goosebumps all over her body. She looked sideways at King Qin, wanting to see his reaction. I saw King Qin looking indifferent and nodded slightly, hello. Shi Yame curiously turned her gaze back to Princess Xiwen, and saw that Su Xiwen was blushing to the very bottom of her ears, holding the handkerchief tightly with both hands. The joy between her brows was evident, and her slightly trembling fingers could not hide the nervousness in her heart. Shi Yame sneered in her heart and thought to herself, what a joy. King Qin didn't expect to meet Su Xiwen here, and he was wondering, when did Xiao become friends with her? Seeing Gu Chengliang standing still, King Qin turned his back and said, let's go to the palace first. Gu Chengliang took a step forward and whispered, Your Majesty, Prince Qi will be here soon. King Qin was stunned for a moment, and then said, in that case, let's wait for King Qi together. Gu Chengliang bowed and thank you, Your Majesty. Mrs. Wang sent the eldest princess of Qing'an to the palace and returned. When she saw King Qin, she immediately came forward to pay her respects. Prince Qi's carriage is coming, a servant came to report. Everyone turned to look at where they came from. Wei Chun and Sun Ning were riding in front, followed closely by the carriage of Prince Qi's mansion. Behind the carriage, there were 8 guards. At the gate of Gu Mansion, Wei Chun dismounted, handed the reins to the chamberlain, and stepped forward to lift the curtain for King Qi. After a while, King Qi got down from the car and saw King Qin standing in front of the crowd. He raised his hands in greeting and said, "Hello, Brother Huang. I thought you were here early, but I didn't expect that Brother Huang was earlier." End of this chapter. The Rebirth of Space, the Lucky Girl from a Farm Family. Author, he would fire every. Chapter 334. Chapter 334 and Hairpin. With a smile on his face, King Qi nodded to King Qi and said, "Xiao and the hairpin ceremony, I will come over early to help Zhongluo. The emperor's younger brother is here, please come to the mansion. Brother Liang, please greet everyone to come into the mansion." The king of Qin regarded himself as his master and turned to Gu Chengliang. After hearing King Qin's instructions, Gu Chengliang smiled and leaned forward and said, "Okay, King Qi invites you. Sirs, please invite me from the mansion." Mrs. Wang greeted with a smile, "King Qi please, Princess Xiwen please, everyone, please invite me from the mansion." King Qi felt angry when he saw King Qin treating himself as his master. Who is he to Yan Ran? What qualifications does he have to entertain guests for Hua Yan Ran? King Qi clenched his teeth and tried hard to suppress the anger rising in his heart. Wei Chun noticed King Qi's forbearance and thought about how to divert his master's attention. He looked up and saw Li Tao behind King Qin and said to King Qi, "Master, the second young master is here too." King Qi turned his attention to Li Tao and saw him standing behind King Qin. He became even more frustrated. He raised his voice and asked Li Tao, "When did Brother Tao arrive?" King Qi's tone was full of evil, as if Li Tao was guilty of arriving early. The people present turned their attention to Li Tao. Shi Yame raised his head and glanced at King Qi, pouted with disdain, turned to look at Li Tao, and said with a bit of disdain, "What does King Qi want to say to you?" Li Tao gave Shi Yame a comforting look, turned to look at Prince Qi, leaned back and said, "Your Majesty, I have just arrived." King Qi had calmed down his mind, glanced at Li Tao, and walked forward. King Qin and other kings of Qi came over and walked to the mansion together. As King Qi walked away, he noticed Princess Xiwen. He frowned slightly and thought to himself, when did Yan Ran and Xiwen get together? Asked, "Xiwen is here too." So Xiwen leaned towards King Qi and said, "Back to my cousin, today is a good day for Princess Yan Ran. Xiwen is here to join in the fun." Seeing that Su Xiwen's voice was normal, Shi Yame complained softly to Li Tao, "Her speaking voice will be different depending on the person." Li Tao smiled at Shi Yame and whispered, "Aren't you talking nonsense? A woman's appearance will please her, and her voice will naturally become sweet to please her." Shi Yame stole a glance at Su Xiwen and whispered, "I just ask her to stop fussing, otherwise, I will get goosebumps all over the floor." "What are you two talking about?" Ye Minghao walked between Li Tao and Shi Yame and asked in a low voice. Li Tao looked back at Ye Minghao and said, "I'm asking Shi-san, on the day you get married, should I go to Chinquo's mansion to be a guest, or should I go to Shi's mansion to be her natal family member to see her off?" Shi Yame didn't expect Li Tao to be so adaptable, so she followed his words, "Are you still thinking about being a guest? Li Er, please remember this for me. You are my sister. On my wedding day, you and Xiao have to be in Shi mansion, do you understand?" Li Tao turned to glare at Shi Yame, "What, the are sisters? Even if I go to Shi mansion, I am also your brother, so how can I become your sister?" Shi Yame looked back at Li Tao with disdain and said fiercely, "I don't lack brothers. You, like Xiao Yu, can only be my sister." Li Tao looked at Ye Minghao, "This is a tigress. What do you like about her?" Ye Minghao replied seriously, "I like her for her good taste, and I want to make a good sister like you." Shi Yame laughed out loud and raised his eyebrows at Li Tao proudly. Li Tao looked at the two of them and said angrily, "We are not the same family. We don't belong to the same family. You two are a perfect match." Although Shi Yame and Li Tao were joking all the time, her attention was always on Suzaiwen. Seeing Suzaiwen getting closer and closer to the king of Qin, she hurriedly said to Yeminghao, "Hurry up and protect the king of Qin, don't let anyone take advantage of him." Yeminghao didn't understand what Shi Yame meant for a moment and asked, "Who is interested?" Li Tao raised his chin and said, "Look, I'm almost attached to King Qin." Yeminghao followed Li Tao's gaze and saw that Suzaiwen was only half a step behind King Qin. From his perspective, the two seemed to be stacked on top of each other. Shi Yame said to Yeminghao, "Sci-fi, go quickly. Qinjian, who can stick to anyone who wants to?" Yeminghao felt that they were too worried. But when Yeminghao met Shi Yame's eyes, he nodded in agreement inexplicably. "Okay, I get it." Shi Yame felt relieved when she watched Yeminghao step forward and get between King Qin and Suzaiwen. As soon as the group of people entered the mansion, a servant came over and said, "Madam, the female relatives from Duke Qingqiu's mansion have arrived." Mrs. Wang turned around and told Gu Chengliang, "Brother Liang, you lead the two princes to rest while I go to meet Mrs. Qin and the others." King Qin said, "Grandma and aunt are passing by, and I should go and greet them." Mrs. Wang nodded in agreement, "Okay, then the prince will come with his wife." King Qi then said, "Mrs. Qin is the elder. I, the king, should pay tribute to the old lady. Let's come together." The two princes spoke, and the others naturally followed, so the group turned back with a roar. Li Tao saw Mrs. Ping helping Mrs. Qin get out of the car, and turned to ask Shi Yame, "Why is your mother-in-law with the people from the Qingqiu palace?" Shi Yame replied in a low voice, "Mrs. Qin is the guest of honor today, and my mother-in-law went to pick up Mrs. Qin specially." After the group of people greeted each other, King Qin stepped forward to help Mrs. Qin. While King Qin held Mrs. Qin's right hand, Suzaiwen also stepped forward and held Mrs. Qin's left hand. For a time, King Qin and Suzaiwen stood on both sides of Mrs. Qin, one on the right and the other on the left. Old Madame Qin looked at King Qin, then turned to look at Suzaiwen. King Qin turned his head and saw Suzaiwen standing on the side, and quickly let go of his hand. Everyone present was stunned when they saw it, and they all looked at the scene in front of them with their own thoughts. Shi Yame glared at Suzaiwen and secretly scolded her for being shameless. Li Tao crossed his hands on his chest and leaned towards Shi Yame, "Is this person a little stupid? He thinks that by pleasing Mrs. Qin, he can capture the heart of King Qin." Shi Yame said angrily, "That's not necessarily the case." King Qi said with a smile, "Zaiwen is really becoming more and more sensible, old lady, right?" Mrs. Qin replied with a smile, "I haven't seen Zaiwen in a few days, and I am indeed becoming more and more sensible." King Qi smiled, raised his eyebrows and said to Ruan Chu next to him, "General Ruan, look at this situation, this whole family, how warm it is." As King Qi spoke, he did not forget to pull someone in to help out. Everyone present understood what King Qi's words meant. Ruan Chu smiled and said, "It's really warm. The old lady is kind-hearted and amiable. Everyone who sees her wants to get close to her and wants to be blessed with her." Ruan Chu avoided what King Qi said and drew everyone's attention to Mrs. Qin. Mrs. Wang smiled and took over the words, "General Ruan is right, the old lady is a very blessed person. Today, I specially invite the old lady to be the guest of honor for Yan Ran, just to let us, Yan Ran, enjoy the good fortune of the old lady." King Qi wanted to say something else, but a servant came over on horseback. Mrs. Wang saw her and said, "I'm afraid concubine Li has arrived." With that said, Mrs. Wang stepped forward to greet her. The chamberlain came forward and said, "Empress Li Fei's chariot has passed Minda Street." Minda Street and Wutong Lane are only one street apart, and a crowd of people immediately lined up to greet him. MRS Ping received the letter and came out with people from the mansion. Soon, everyone saw 8 guards with swords walking in front. Behind the guards was concubine Li's chariot. Around the chariot were a group of palace maids and chamberlains. Behind the chariot, 8 guards with swords followed. The chariot stopped and everyone paid homage to concubine Li. A chamberlain came over carrying a soft sedan. Concubine Li, who was dressed in gorgeous clothes, got on the sedan and was carried into the Gu mansion by the chamberlain. The rest of the people followed into the mansion, and everyone went to the flower hall first. After a while, Wang Qin came over and said, "Old madam, the auspicious time is coming, please move to the main hall." Concubine Li, the eldest princess of Qing'an, the king of Qin, the king of Qi, and Princess Xiwen were invited to attend the ceremony. After MRS Qin sat down at the guest of honor seat, MRS Ping sat down at the host seat and then gave a brief speech. Gu Huayu entered the main hall from the east chamber and knelt down to MRS Ping, who was sitting at the top. When MRS Ping saw Gu Huayu lying on the ground, she suddenly felt a mixture of emotions. A sour breath rushed up from her chest, making her eyes moist. She couldn't help but raise her hand to wipe the corners of her eyes. Princess Jinglian waited for Gu Huayu to bow and said in a loud voice, "This is the beginning of the ceremony for Princess Yanran and her hairpin." At the viewing banquet, Princess Xiwen stared at Princess Jinglian, feeling angrily. Jinglian actually praised Hua Yanran? Last year for her haircut ceremony, Jinglian felt unwell and did not even attend the ceremony. MRS Jean stood up, came over to Chao Yang with water, and asked MRS Jean to clean her hands. Gu Huayu then walked to the middle of the room and saluted everyone at the ceremony. Gu Huayu straightened up and smiled when she saw Qin dynasty. Gu Huayu pursed her lips at him. Gu Huayu looked away from King Qin and saw King Qi and Princess Xiwen on the left and right of King Qin. She knew that Su Xiwen would come, but she didn't know that King Qi was also coming. King Qi saw her looking over and smiled at her. Gu Huayu took a quick look and then looked away. Princess Xiwen looked at her expressionlessly, not knowing what she was thinking. Princess Jinglian waited for Gu Huayu to finish her salute and said, "Kneel down." Gu Huayu turned to the east and knelt down on the mat in the middle of the room. Princess Jinglian continued, "Shujia." Hungzia came over carrying a tray with a comb on it. MRS Jean picked up the comb and combed Gu Huayu's hair and said, "On the auspicious day of the month, you will start to add yuanfu. If you abandon your young aspirations, you will become virtuous by being obedient. If you live long, you will be blessed." As she spoke, MRS Jean Gu Huayu's hair. Then stepped back to the side. Princess Jinglian raised her voice and said, "Bow down." After hearing Jinglian's words, Gu Huayu fell to the ground and bowed. Jinglian didn't stop talking, and continued, "Serve relatives with filial piety, and those at the doorstep with kindness." When Gu Huayu straightened up, Princess Jinglian continued, 2+. MRS Jean cleaned her hands again, turned around, took the hairpin, and said in a loud voice, "The auspicious month is the day of the month, which is the time for Shen Erfu. Respect you for your majesty, shushan, and virtue. Your eyebrows will live for thousands of years, and you will be blessed forever." Princess Jinglian stepped forward and removed the hairpin from Gu Huayu's head. MRS Jean inserted the hairpin in her hand into Gu Huayu's head. Princess Jinglian helped straighten the hairpin. Everyone watching the ceremony bowed their hands to Gu Huayu. King Qin felt hot in his heart when he saw Gu Huayu choose the hairpin he gave her. With the help of Princess Jinglian, Gu Huayu returned to the east chamber and put on the dark clothes with deep skirts that had been prepared in advance. Gu Huayu changed her clothes, returned to the main hall, greeted the spectators, and then faced MRS Jean. Hearing Princess Jinglian say 2 bows, she immediately knelt down and bowed to Old Man Qin. When Gu Huayu straightened up, Princess Jinglian continued, 3 plus. Mrs. Jean cleaned her hands again, turned around, took the hairpin, and chanted loudly, with the blessing of the year, with the order of the moon, I will serve you. Brothers are here to achieve great virtue. Huangzhang has no boundaries, and is blessed by heaven. Princess Jinglian stepped forward and took off Gu Huayu's hairpin. Mrs. Jean knelt down, crowned Gu Huayu, then stood up and stepped aside. Princess Jinglian helped Gu Huayu straighten her crown. Everyone watching the ceremony bowed to Gu Huayu. King Qin watched Gu Huayu return to the east chamber with burning eyes. The king of Qin's eyes were scorching, while the eyes of the king of Qi were blazing. The blazing eyes of the king of Qi also contained 2 parts of greed and determination. Gu Huayu returned to the east chamber and put on a long blue dress with long sleeves and a belt inlaid with rubies and sapphires. Gu Huayu, dressed in fine clothes, returned to the main hall and greeted everyone watching the ceremony. Princess Jinglian raised her voice and said, 3 bows. Gu Huayu bowed 3 times upward. Then, Mrs. Jean stepped forward and took Gu Huayu's hand, walking to the west side of the banquet. Gu Huayu stood on the west side, facing south. Mrs. Jean faced west, Princess Jinglian served wine, and Gu Huayu turned to the north. Mrs. Jean took the wine from Princess Jinglian, walked to Gu Huayu, and said to Gu Huayu, the wine is sweet and thick, and I recommend it to you. I worship and sacrifice it to determine your auspiciousness. I will rest with you, don't forget the longevity test. Gu Huayu bowed and took the wine. Mr. Qin returned the gift. Gu Huayu sat down at the table, knelt down and sprinkled some wine on the ground, then raised the glass and took a sip, then placed the wine glass on the table. Hengxia offered the rice, and Gu Huayu took it and started eating some. Putting down the bowl and chopsticks, Gu Huayu bowed to Mrs. Jean again, and Mrs. Jean bowed in return. Afterwards, Gu Huayu got up and left the table, walked to the west steps and stood facing south. Mrs. Ping stood up from her seat and walked over, standing facing west. Mrs. Jean said, Princess, the Emperor gives you Princess Yan Ran. Your nickname is still Yan Ran, okay. Gu Huayu nodded and said, okay. The mother's wish during her lifetime was told to her about her life experience after she had hair extensions. From today on, she will live in the world as Hua Yan Ran and seek justice for her father and mother. Mrs. Jean read, the etiquette is ready, and the month and day are auspicious, and the word UN is announced. The word UN is Kongjia, which is suitable for fashionable people. It is suitable for fakes, and it will be protected forever. It is called Yan Ranfu. Hua Yan Ran knelt down and replied, although Yan Ran is not sensitive, she dare not come so late at night. Then, Hua Yan Ran bowed to Old Man Qin, and Old Man Qin returned the salute and stepped aside. Hua Yan Ran knelt in front of Mrs. Ping. Mrs. Ping looked up at the sky and choked with sobs, Brother Ling, have you seen it? Our Yan Ran has grown up. You have spirits in heaven. Take good care of my grandson. Yan Ran. Hua Yan Ran straightened up, hugged Mrs. Ping's legs and persuaded her, if grandma doesn't cry, my father and mother will be sad when they see her. Hua Yan Ran tried to persuade Mrs. Ping, but she started to cry bitterly. End of this chapter. The Rebirth of Space, the lucky girl from a farm family. Author, he would fire every. Chapter 335. Chapter 335 Gratitude. The mother-in-law and grandson held each other's arms and cried. Mrs. Jean and Princess Jinglian came forward to comfort them. Everyone in the audience was moved. Mrs. Fang, Mrs. Ping, Mrs. Jian, Yamingjian and Shi Yamei all raised their hands to wipe away tears. After a while, Mrs. Ping calmed down and warned, Yan Ran has grown up today. Grandma has nothing to ask for. She only hopes that my Yanran will have a smooth life. Hua Yanran choked with sobs and said, "Thank you, Grandma, Yanran." After saying that, Hua Yanran bowed to Mrs. Ping. Then, Hua Yanran wiped the corners of her eyes, stood up, and walked to the center of the venue. She bowed first to Mrs. Qin, then to everyone watching the ceremony, and then to Princess Jinglian, Wang Qin, Huada, and Sui Er. After Hua Yanran thanked everyone, Mrs. Ping calmed down and said to everyone, "My granddaughter Hua Yanran's hairpin ceremony has been completed. Thank you to all your relatives and friends for your kind participation." Mrs. Ping and Hua Yanran bowed to everyone together to thank them. Mrs. Wang stepped forward and said, "We have some wine and vegetables at home. Please move to the dining room." Empress Li Fei did not stay to eat. She said some auspicious words to Gu Huayu and then stood up to leave. A group of people sent concubine Li to the gate. When concubine Li left, Zhang Xin ran from the General Zhenqiu's residence, followed and said goodbye. Princess Jing'an wanted to leave, but Su Ziwen begged her in a low voice, "Mother, can you stay a little longer? There is no better way to know a daughter than a mother." How could Princess Jing'an not know her daughter's thoughts? Her daughter has been fond of the sixth young master of the British government since she was a child, and Princess Jing'an has been troubled by this for a long time. She knew very well that Mrs. Yang of the British Duke's family did not want to see the British Duke's son, and she was worried that her daughter would be offended if she married into the British Duke's family. Furthermore, Princess Jing'an's personal experience made her understand that there is a huge difference between a noble family and the royal family. At that time, when she married into the Yong'an Marquis mansion, the Yong'an Marquis mansion was also a first-class noble family. But now, the Yong'an Marquis mansion has long been strong on the outside but weak on the inside, and it only has a superficial appearance. She hopes that her daughter can marry into the royal family and become a princess. Of course, it would be best if she can follow her husband into the palace and become a queen one day. Just when she was worried about her daughter's marriage and didn't know what to do, news came from the palace that the emperor's eldest son had been found. The eldest princess of Qing'an never expected that Lu Zixun would be the eldest son of the emperor who was living abroad. God seems to know her thoughts, and magically blends what her daughter likes with what she wants. How can she not be happy? The princess of Qing'an raised her head and looked at King Qin, and saw that King Qin was holding Mrs. Qin's hand and half bent to listen to Mrs. Qin's words. Wherever she looked, she could see King Qin's tenderness and thoughtfulness, which made Princess Jing'an's heart beat wildly. The mother-in-law became more and more happy as she looked at her son-in-law. That day at Qi Mansion, Jinglian was annoyed that Ziwen could not step down because she defended outsiders, so she casually said that she would come to watch the ceremony today. What Princess Jing'an said casually at that time was just to let Jinglian understand her emotions and tell Jinglian that she was unhappy. Of course, she had to do what she said, so she came today as promised. She is a high-ranking princess. When she comes, Hua Yanran cannot neglect her. She comes to join in the fun, just to relax. It's just that Princess Jing'an didn't expect anyone from Duke Zhenqiu's residence to come, let alone meet the King of Qin here. How can you miss this God-given opportunity? Princess Jing'an nodded in agreement. Okay, but you have to promise me that you must act in a measured manner and not be willful. Princess Ziwen bowed her head and said, "My daughter understands that when I first entered the mansion, the old lady from Duke Zhenqiu's mansion praised me for being sensible." After hearing what her daughter said, Princess Jing'an felt happy and asked, "Really?" Princess Ziwen nodded and said, "Of course it's true." King Qi, third Miss Shi, and second young Master Li were all present at that time. The eldest princess, Princess Ziwen, please come to the mansion. Mrs. Wang came over to greet her with a smile on her face. Princess Jing'an smiled and said to Mrs. Wang, "Okay." Su Huiyun hated Princess Jing'an deeply after learning that she had come forward to protect Su Zilian and Huang Xingyi's matchmaking. When Su Huiyun saw the eldest princess of Qing'an today, he was extremely jealous as if he were seeing an enemy. Mrs. Fang knew that Su Huiyun had grievances against her mother's family, and was afraid that she would lose her manners in front of others, so she reminded her, Huiyun, today is a good day for Princess Yanran, don't act recklessly. Su Huiyun said, thank you, mother, for reminding me. My wife knows. The group went to the dining room, which was next to the flower hall and was divided into two with a screen to separate the male guests and the female guests. Gu Chengliang led the king of Qin, king of Qi, Li Tao and others to the left. Princess Xiwen's eyes followed King Qin until Yeshan called out, Princess Xiwen, please come this way. Xiwen looked away and smiled sheepishly at Yeshan, thank you, Miss Ye. Su Xiwen wanted to call Mrs. Ye, but thinking that Yeshan had reconciled with the British prince, he changed his mind immediately. Yeshan smiled and said, please. Mrs. Wang stood at the dining table and moved Princess Jing'an and Princess Xiwen to the top. Su Xiwen chose a seat facing the male guests. He looked up at the male guests area and saw the king of Qin in moon-white clothes. He sat down contentedly. To Princess Jing'an's left is Princess Xiwen, and to her right is Princess Jinglian. Next to Princess Jinglian are Hua Yanran, and next to Hua Yanran, in order are Mrs. Qin, Mrs. Ping, and Mrs. Fang. There are 8 people at the table. There is still one empty seat at this table. Mrs. Wang politely allows Mrs. Su to sit down. Mrs. Su glanced at Princess Jing'an who was sitting at the top, shook her head and said, Mrs. Ping, please sit over here. I can sit at the table next to you. Su Xiwen turned to look at Su Huiyun and advised, Auntie, sit down. Mrs. Su ignored Su Xiwen and turned around to sit on the table next to her. Su Xiwen was embarrassed by Su Huiyun and couldn't get off the stage. He looked at Princess Jing'an with a red face and whispered, Auntie, what's wrong? The princess of Qing'an saw Su Huiyun throwing Su Xiwen in front of her face. She felt offended and her face immediately darkened. Hearing his daughter's question again, he said angrily, who knows why she is crazy? Su Huiyun stood up, bowed to Mrs. Ping, and said, Mrs. Ping, Princess Yanran, I'm sorry, I have something to do, so I have to leave first. Mrs. Wang asked in surprise, what's wrong? Dinner will be served soon. The sky is huge and the earth is big, and eating is the biggest thing. If you have anything else, let's talk about it after dinner. Mrs. Su apologized and said in a loud voice, I won't eat anymore. My Swimay's mood has been unstable in the past 2 days. I have to go back and take a look. Mrs. Ping was busy arranging her daughter's wedding these days. She didn't know anything about the gossip in the Yong'an Marquis mansion. She asked with concern, what's wrong with Swimei? What happened? Mrs. Su glanced at Princess Jing'an and Su Xiwen, and said sarcastically, it's nothing, our Swimei's life is just a bit miserable, because she was tricked by her cousin and aunt. Speaking of which, it's my fault for being stupid. I teach Swimei every day, telling her that cousins are just like biological sisters, they are close relatives by blood, and they should be brothers and sisters. Let her treat her cousins as her closest relatives wholeheartedly. Unexpectedly, I asked my daughter to regard my mother's family as her relatives, but my mother's family stabbed her in the back. In the past few days, poor Swimei, this child, couldn't sleep well all night long. Yesterday Swimei asked me, why are we plotting against her when we are obviously close relatives? For the sake of a man, for the sake of marriage, can you even ignore your blood relatives? Because Mrs. Su couldn't calm down, the more she talked, the more resentful she felt, and she glared at Princess Jing'an and Princess Xiwen. Mrs. Ping did not expect that she would ask a shocking question. Although Su Huiyun did not name the person who stabbed Wang Swimei in the back, who among the people present did not know that Princess Jing'an was her natal sister-in-law and Princess Xiwen was her biological niece? Mrs. Ping turned to look at Princess Jing'an, who saw Princess Jing'an looking at Su Huiyun with a pale face. Mrs. Ping was so embarrassed that she didn't know what to do. Princess Jinglian said with sympathy on her face, "Don't be sad, Mrs. Su. I've heard about Suimei too. For the sake of a man, for the sake of a marriage, even relatives are cheated. Just go around when you see her in the future." Li Tao has always been prone to fights, and Wang Suimei's matter also involved Hua Yanran, so he had already asked someone to find out clearly. As soon as Princess Jinglian finished speaking, Li Tao took over and said, "Mrs. Su, this is a good thing. You should go to the temple to burn incense." King Qi reprimanded in a deep voice, "Shut up, Mrs. Su is terribly sad. You still say it's a good thing. Are you deliberately trying to make people angry?" Li Tao argued, "Back to your lord, everything I said is true. How can it be irritating?" King Qin said, "Tell me your reasons." Li Tao smiled and nodded, "Miss Wang, this happened before she left the cabinet. Through this incident, she can see the people around her clearly, which is a profit. Just imagine, if something like this hadn't happened, wouldn't it be even worse if Ms. Wang only saw the faces of the people around her after she came out of the cabinet? As for people, some have good character and some have bad character. It has nothing to do with whether they are relatives or not. As Princess Jinglian said, if you encounter such a scumbag who even cheats your relatives, just take a detour." Yashan didn't know the reason, so she turned around and asked Mrs. Wang softly, "What happened to Huiyun Suimei? Why can't I understand?" Mrs. Wang gave her an overview of what happened in a low voice. After hearing this, Yashan looked at Su Huiyun sympathetically, and then looked at Princess Jing'an and Su Ziwen with more contempt in her eyes. The eldest princess of Qing'an never imagined that Su Huiyun would get angry regardless of the occasion. They say that a family scandal should not be exposed publicly. How could she say this without hesitation at other people's banquets? What about her upbringing and her etiquette? Mrs. Fang looked at Princess Jing'an, turned to Su Huiyun and said, "Huiyun, stop talking, don't be angry, there's nothing to be sad about. This incident has damaged our Suimei's reputation, and will make Suimei's marriage more difficult in the future. The worst thing is that Suimei can't get married. Our old Wang family, with the old man here, me here, Zhou here, and you here, that girl Suimei has a family. Even if we die in 100 years and are no longer here, Xueqing and Xin will not ignore Suimei. It is said that the way of heaven is reincarnation, who will the heaven bypass? Let's just watch carefully and see what good results will come from those bad-hearted people. You go back to stay with Suimei first, I will come back later." Su Huiyun listened to Mrs. Fang's words, calmed down his anger, and blessed everyone, "I'm sorry, please use it slowly." Mrs. Wang said, "Yingzi, please help me organize things, and I will go see Mrs. Su off." The eldest princess of Qing'an originally wanted to take the opportunity to talk to Mrs. Jin and find out what Mrs. Jin said. Although Zixun is now the eldest son of the emperor, King Qin, she can see that Zixun respects the people in the Qingqiu palace very much. Especially Mrs. Jin, King Qin simply obeyed her words. Ziwen wants to marry into the prince of Qin's palace, all he has to do is pass the Duke Qingqiu palace. Having a good game of chess, he was beaten to pieces by Su Huiyun. The princess of Qing'an was so angry that she wanted to skin Su Huiyun. Su Ziwen is young after all and is not as strong as Princess Jing'an. After being glared at by Su Huiyun and scolded with insinuations, and then listening to the words of Jing Lian and Li Er, Su Ziwen felt more confident. Possibly due to a guilty conscience, Su Ziwen lowered his head from beginning to end, wishing he could find a crack in the ground to crawl in. Fortunately, Mrs. Ping arranged for everyone to have dinner, and Su Ziwen was rescued from the embarrassing situation. Knowing that today was not the time to talk, after dinner, Princess Jing'an stood up to say goodbye and hurriedly left with Princess Ziwen. When getting on the car, Su Ziwen boarded the car of Princess Jing'an. The mother and daughter sat together and the car drove out of Wutong Lane. Su Ziwen said with red eyes, "Mom, my aunt did this on purpose, right? She knew that I was in love with the king of Qin, so she deliberately said those words in front of the people of Qingqiu Palace, right? Mother, aunt, why is she so bad?" Princess Jing'an was born as a golden princess. From childhood to middle age, others have always obeyed her and followed her wishes. Who dares to say no to her? Today, Su Huiyun took the courage of a leopard and dared to criticize her insinuatingly in front of outsiders. She has lost her mind and gone crazy, so she dared to talk nonsense in front of outsiders. "You don't need to take her words to heart," Princess Jing'an said. Su Ziwen said angrily, "But now that Zigzun is in the house and Zigzun heard this, what will he think of me?" The eldest princess of Qing'an was upset and said angrily, "Zigzun, Zigzun, is your name Zigzun? King Qin or cousin?" Su Ziwen lowered his head and said, "Yes, my daughter has realized her mistake. From now on, she will be called King Qin." "Mother, what should I do with my daughter?" Princess Jing'an thought for a while and said, "Don't be anxious. I will hand the sign to the palace tomorrow to see if I can see the emperor. If I can see the emperor, I will mention it to the emperor and ask him to give you a gift marriage." Su Ziwen's eyes lit up when he heard this. "Mother, are you telling the truth? Will the emperor really grant a marriage to his daughter?" Princess Jing'an leaned against the carriage and looked forward with squinted eyes. "You are the emperor's niece. It is a good thing to marry her. The emperor will naturally favor you." Su Ziwen had more expectations in his heart, but he was still not at ease. He looked at Princess Jing'an and said, "Mother, if my aunt said those words in front of the people of the Qingqiu Palace today, will it make the Qingqiu Palace unhappy? How much do you think? And King Qin, will he look down on me because of this?" Princess Jing'an shook her head. "No, if they knew that you did those things to win over the Huang family, they would only be grateful to you." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Rebirth of Space, the lucky girl from a farm family. Author, he would fire every. Chapter 336. Chapter 336 Threat. Su Ziwen finally felt relieved after hearing what Princess Jing'an said. She really agreed to help Su Zilian because she was looking for help for the king of Qin. Su Ziwen is looking forward to the early arrival of tomorrow, when his mother will go to the palace to meet the Holy One. As long as the Holy One grants them a marriage, she will be the princess of Qin. King Qin looked at King Qi and saw King Qi talking leisurely and contentedly with Li Tao. Holding a cup in his hand, he lowered his head to take a sip of tea from time to time. When he saw him looking over, he raised the cup in his hand towards him. King Qin looked at Hua Yanran, who was looking at him. When he saw him looking over, she immediately gave him a look. Xiao asked him to leave first. King Qi had no intention of leaving, he was waiting for him to leave. King Qin knew that King Qi would only leave if he left. So King Qin said goodbye first and left with Ruan Chu and Yeming Hao. Seeing King Qin leaving, Li Tao didn't want to stay with King Qi any longer, so he also left. When King Qi saw that the male guests were leaving one after another, he couldn't stay long, so he had to get up and leave. Mrs. Wang smiled and said, "I send you to the prince." King Qi passed Mrs. Wang, looked at Hua Yanran, and said, "Madam is busy, let Yanran see me off. It just so happens that I have a few words to say to Yanran." Mrs. Wang smiled awkwardly and turned to look at Hua Yanran. "This." Hua Yanran said to Mrs. Wang, "Aunt, you talk to Mrs. Jin and the others, and I will see off the prince." Hua Yanran and Prince Ji left the room. Shi Yame looked at Princess Jinglian and asked with some worry, "Princess, look, Princess Jinglian glanced at the door and said, "Don't worry, King Chi can't do anything to Yan Ran." Mrs. Ping pulled off her daughter's sleeve and said, "Just put your heart back in your stomach. Yan Ran's behavior is much more reliable than yours." Hua Yan Ran sent King Chi to the gate. Before getting into the car, King Chi said to Wei Tian, "Please step aside for a moment. I have something to say to the princess." Wei Tian bowed his waist and walked away smoothly. King Chi looked at Wei Tian walking away, then turned to look at Hua Yan Ran. Hua Yan Ran was 4 or 5 steps away from him, clasping her hands in front of her. "Your Majesty, if you have anything to explain, please tell me." King Chi looked at the graceful flower Yan Ran, thought for a moment, and said bluntly, "Yan Ran, you have reached the age of hair, so it's time to consider getting married. Tomorrow I will ask my father for a decree and ask him to grant a marriage for you and me." "Okay." Hua Yan Ran was shocked by King Chi's straightforward words. From which eye did he see that she was going to marry him? He said the marriage proposal so calmly, was he sure that she would marry him? Why is he so sure? Hua Yan Ran went from shocked to angry, and then from angry back to calm. In an instant, her heart was ups and downs like a roller coaster. Hua Yan Ran calmed down and thought quickly, could it be that she had done something inappropriate before, causing the superior prince to misunderstand her? King Chi saw Hua Yan Ran in a daze and was very satisfied. He said, "I have left. You can wait at home for the imperial edict granting marriage." King Chi's words made Hua Yan Ran come back to her senses. Seeing that King Chi was about to board the carriage, Hua Yan Ran said hurriedly, "Thank you, King Chi, for your love. I'm sorry, I'm already engaged." King Chi stiffened, turned around and looked at Hua Yan Ran. A trace of anger flashed in his eyes, and asked coldly, "Is there an engagement? Whose family?" Hua Yan Ran caught the flash of anger in King Chi's eyes and the deep displeasure on his face. Hua Yan Ran met King Chi's gaze and said bluntly, "This is my private matter. There is no need to tell King Chi. King Chi, please go away." King Chi looked deeply at the rebellious Hua Yan Ran, and said coldly, "Do you know the consequences of rejecting me?" Hua Yan Ran straightened her body, raised her chin, and said calmly, "I have no intention of annoying King Chi. If King Chi feels that I have offended you, I would like to apologize to King Chi here." King Chi stared at Hua Yan Ran for a while and said, "What if I don't accept your apology?" Hua Yan Ran said, "That's okay. King Chi can do whatever he wants. I just told King Chi that I have an engagement and I will not marry King Chi. If King Chi becomes angry because of this and wants to do something, I would like to advise King Chi to think twice before making any decision. Because, I am not someone to be bullied. No matter whether King Chi attacks me or someone I care about, I will return it unceremoniously." King Chi narrowed his eyes slightly and said, "Are you threatening me?" Hua Yan Ran sneered and raised her chin slightly, "Isn't it because King Chi threatened me and I kindly reminded King Chi?" King Chi put his tongue against his cheek and said word by word, "Whatever I want, I will get it no matter what means I use." Hua Yan Ran sneered and replied, "There are exceptions to everything." Before Hua Yan Ran could finish speaking, King Chi interrupted her, "No, there is no exception for me. If I can't get it, no one else can get it. I would rather destroy it than take advantage of others." Hua Yan Ran met King Chi's gaze, and she felt from his eyes that what he said was true. He was a man with a strong desire to control. However, she is not afraid of him. Fear is synonymous with incompetence, and she is not an incompetent person. Hua Yan Ran said calmly, "It just so happens that I have a temper. Let's ride on the donkey and look at the account book, we'll see." King Chi walked slowly, "Don't send me away." After saying that, Hua Yan Ran rarely paid attention to him anymore, turned around and walked back to the house. Speak more to mental illness, it's because you are mentally ill. King Qi stared at Hua Yanran entering the palace. The fists in his hands tightened and then loosened, and then tightened again. After a while, he turned around and got into the car and ordered Wei Tian, "Let's go." Wei Tian hurried back and drove away. Hua Yanran returned to the courtyard and saw her grandmother and her aunt sending people from Shi Mansion and Chinquo Mansion out. He asked with a smile, "Old madam, are you going back?" Mrs. Jean smiled and said, "It's getting late, it's time to go back." Shi Yame rushed up from behind and asked, "What did King Qi say to you after being gone for so long?" Hua Yanran shook her head, "Nothing." "Are you going back too?" Shi Yame nodded, "Well, I'll go back with the Niang and the others. The day after tomorrow is the wedding day of King Xian and Wang Piyun. Where are you going?" Hua Yanran shook her head, "I have no friendship with either party. I will not go to either party. I will only ask someone to send a gift to Prince Xian's mansion. Do you want to go there?" Shi Yame said, "I made an appointment with Sister Jin to follow the princess to Prince Xian's mansion instead of the Prime Minister's mansion." "Okay, I hope you have fun." After seeing off the people from Chinquo's mansion and Shi's mansion, Hua Yanran said to Mrs. Ping and Mrs. Wang, "After working for a long time, my grandmother and aunt are also tired. Let's go back and have a rest." Mrs. Ping was thinking about King Qi's affairs and asked, "Yanran, King Qi didn't make things difficult for you, right?" Hua Yanran shook her head and said with relief, "No, Grandma, don't worry. Go back to the house and have a rest." Mrs. Ping nodded in agreement, "Okay." Hua Yanran sent Mrs. Ping and Mrs. Wang back to the small courtyard, turned around and came out, saw Wang Qin standing under the veranda, and walked towards Wang Qin. Wang Qin leaned forward and said, "Princess," Huada said, "Princess, please go to the study. There is progress on the Sunan Silver Tower." Hua Yanran nodded, "I understand. Let them wait for me in the study. I'll change my clothes and come over." Wang Qin bowed down and turned to leave. Hua Yanran changed her clothes and then went to the study. Su'er was sitting near the door. He saw Gu Huayu first and stood up to greet him, "Princess." Hua Yanran stepped into the study and saw Han Shi, Wang Qin, Lu Guang, Su'er, Qingye and Hua Dadu there. Everyone stood up and saluted her. Hua Yanran walked to the desk and sat down. "Everyone, sit down. Is there any progress at the Sunan Silver building?" Hua Yanran said hello and turned to look at Huada. Huada replied, "Back to the princess, Qingye handed me the letter." After King Yi returned to Beijing with Huada, he took up the matter of inquiring about Sunan Silver Tower. Wang Qin handed Hua Yanran a cup of tea. Hua Yanran took it and took a sip. She looked at King Yi and asked, "King Yi, tell me, what's the progress?" King Yi leaned forward and said, "Back to the princess, what happened to Miss Su's family may have been done by Mrs. Shangguan. I'll start with the people around Mrs. Shangguan. The incident at Sunan Silver Tower happened 20 years ago. The only people who knew about it were the old people who had been with Mrs. Shangguan for many years. As for Mrs. Shangguan, the only person who has been with her for more than 20 years is Mrs. Shangguan's steward Mama Yang." So, the young man set out to investigate Grandma Yang. Mani Yang is the dowry maid of Mrs. Shangguan and has never married in her life. Mother Yang's name is Yang Donghua. She is the second eldest of 3 siblings in the Yang family. She has an older sister named Yang Chunyua and a younger brother named Yang Juyu. Yang Chunyua married a servant named Feng Wangke of the Shangguan family. Yang Chunyua and Feng Wangke had 2 sons and 2 daughters. The eldest son is Feng Guangsheng, who is now working as a steward in Huarujun's ride-hailing business. Hua Yanran couldn't help but straighten up and asked, "Is Feng Guangsheng working for Huarujun?" King Yi leaned forward and said, "Yes, when I was investigating Feng Guangsheng, I found out that his wife turned out to be Manking, the maid of the late Misu of Sunan Silver House. Hua Yanran stood up in shock. So, Su Xian's death was a result of a conspiracy between traitors. King Yi nodded and said, it's very possible. Also, before Feng Guangsheng started working in Shunfen Maxing, he was the manager of Lunjing Wei Chengying department for 5 years. The young man was shocked by these things. In order not to alert the enemy, he did not act without authorization. Instead, he came back to ask the princess for instructions on what to do next. Hua Yanran looked at Huada and asked, Uncle Hua, what do you think of this matter? Huada looked solemn and said, for Feng Guangsheng to be able to be a steward in Lunjing Guard, he must have been in Lunjing Guard for at least 10 years, plus the 5 years he has been in charge. He has been in Lunjing Guard for at least 15 years, plus his after spending 7 years in Huarujun's carriage house. Feng Guangsheng entered Lunjing Guard at least 22 years ago. In other words, Wang Xiang's people entered Lunjing Guard 22 years ago. When the people in the room heard this, their faces became solemn. Su Er looked at Hua Yanran and said, Feng Guangsheng is the breakthrough point. Who else is there in Feng Guangsheng's family? Let's capture Feng Guangsheng's family first. Hua Yanran looked at Huada and asked, Uncle Hua, what do you think? Huada looked at King Yi and asked, who else is in Feng Guangsheng's family? King Yi replied, Man King gave birth to 2 sons and 1 daughter to Feng Guangsheng. The eldest son Feng Xingguang works as a steward in Wuruhun's Hualanba village. The second son Feng Xinming works with Huarujun, and her daughter Feng Xinyu works in Wuruhunjun's biological mother Yuniang became a maid. There was too much information today. Hua Yanran used a homemade pencil to quickly draw on the paper the relationship between Feng Guangsheng's family. Then he murmured, in a family of 5, only Man Qing has not come out to do anything. The rest are all under Huarujun's orders. It feels weird. Do you think anything is wrong? Wang Qin looked at the relationship network of the characters on Hua Yanran's paper, nodded and said, it's indeed wrong. Su Er looked at Wang Qin, then at Hua Yanran, and asked, what's wrong? Han Shi took over the words, Feng Guangsheng is from the Wang Xiangfu. Strictly speaking, he should be from the Shangguan family. Their family should take orders from the Shangguan family, not Huarujun. Huarujun is just Huasu's concubine, so it doesn't make sense here, and there is something fishy about it. Hua Yanran looked at Han Shi with admiration. Uncle Han's analysis is reasonable. Why should Feng Guangsheng's family obey Huarujun's orders? Su Er said, in 2 cases, either Huarujun is from Shangguanfu, or Huarujun's biological mother is from Shangguanfu. In other words, Huarujun is the master of Feng Guangsheng's family. Lu Guang said, didn't we check Huarujun and his biological mother? Huarujun's biological mother Yuiniang was a female prostitute in a brothel. At this point, Lu Guang paused and then said, yes, female prostitute. Could it be that Huasu is Huarujun's cheap father? After Lu Guang finished speaking, Han Shi clapped his hands excitedly and said excitedly, it's very possible. If you think about it this way, you can figure everything out. At that time, if no one helped Huasu, Huasu would not have harmed the head of the family. Huarujun's mother and son were the transactions between those people and Huasu. Huada pondered for a moment, nodded and said, this is a serious matter, so don't act rashly, lest you scare the grass and scare the snake. Hua Yanran nodded. Feng Guangsheng's family has Huarujun's trust. If something happens to the Feng family, it will definitely arouse the vigilance of Huarujun and others. Let's first secretly check Yuiniang to see if she is involved with the Shangguan family. Qingye bowed and responded, I understand, little one. Hua Yanran turned to look at Han Shi and asked, Uncle Han, has the matter about Sunan Silver Tower been revealed? Han Shi replied, it has been revealed, and he also anonymously sent a letter to the Yashitai, reporting that Wang Haoj, a direct bachelor of Baoan Pavilion, forced a good woman to death. As the story of Sun and Silver House spread in tea houses and restaurants, the good relationship between Wang Haoj and Su Xian also spread. Today the court is resting, and tomorrow the court will go to court. Someone must impeach Wang Haoj. Hua Yanran tapped the table with the index finger of her right hand, nodded slightly and said, "Okay, the case has finally made progress. Today is a good day, let the kitchen add food, and let's get together in the evening to celebrate." Wang Qin responded happily, "Okay, I'll inform the cook right now." Hua Yanran waved her hand and said, "Go ahead. Remember to ask them to make braised prawns." Wang Qin looked at Sui-er, "Have you bought the 2 alleys behind the old house?" Sui-er responded, "Back to the princess, I have already bought it. Some houses are old and need to be renovated." End of this chapter. The Rebirth of Space, the lucky girl from a farm family. Author, he would fire every. Chapter 337. Chapter 337 Spit it out. Hua Yanran said, "If you can repair it, repair it. If you can't repair it, tear it down and rebuild it. You can deal with it." Sui-er bowed and stepped down. Huada stood up, took a stack of account books from the bookshelf and handed it to Gu Huayu, saying, "Princess, these are the account books of various banks in the south of the Yangtze River. Please take a look at them." Hua Yanran counted 10 books in total. Hua Yanran picked up a book and opened it. Huada watched Hua Yanran flipping through the pages and said, "We currently don't have enough manpower to compete head-on with Baofeng Bank. We can only open these semicolons first, wait for 2 years, wait for the manpower to be trained, and then gradually expand based on the existing basis." Hua Yanran nodded, "Okay, no rush, let's take it step by step. When doing business, the shop is important, but the people who manage the shop are even more important." Huada turned around and took the sandalwood box that had been put aside and handed it to Hua Yanran, "Princess, these are the house deeds and land deeds of the 10 families. Please keep them." Hua Yanran nodded, "Okay, thank you, Uncle Hua. We now have the information that the real power of Baofeng Bank is almost in Huarujun's hands. Huaruiming is only in charge of 2 Baofeng banks, Giung and Jingcheng. However, there are only 2 Giung pavilions left in the capital." Han Shi interjected and corrected, "Princess, there is only 1 restaurant left in Giung Pavilion in the west of the city. The one in the south of the city was also closed 2 days ago." Sui-er took over and said, "These days, there are many people coming to Hua Mansion to collect debts. Huaruiming hasn't gone out for a few days." Lu Guang asked in surprise, "Debt collector? Has Commander Hua paid off the debt?" Since Long Yingwei came to Ming Dynasty, all the people on the roster have their monthly reports issued by the Ministry of Household Affairs. In this way, he, a commander who doesn't have to worry about the salary of his subordinates, can still owe foreign debts. He is also a talent. Lu Guang's words were full of contempt. Han Shi smiled and said, "Salary is only part of it, all the shops in Giun Pavilion are properties passed down by Long Yingwei. He doesn't need to pay a penny in rent. Half of the waiters in the shop are Long Yingwei's people, so he doesn't need to pay wages. In this way, he can make a sure profit without losing money, but he can still make a loss in the business. He is indeed a rare talent." Sui-er sneered, "Huaruiming can only drink flower wine, and all his thoughts are spent on women. He is suitable for opening a brothel. It is a bit embarrassing for him to do other things." Huada looked dazzled and cleared his throat twice. Sui-er looked over and saw Hua staring at him. He immediately came over and realized that in front of Princess Yi, a young girl who had not yet married, she said that Huaju brothel was a bit too much. Sui-er shut up and stopped talking. Lu Guang brought the topic back at the right time. No wonder Huarujun can open a tea house and drive a horse. It turns out that Baofeng Bank has been in his hands for a long time. Huada said, First find out Hwarujun's identity and see whose son he is. Are he and Hwaruiming brothers fighting, or are they trying to occupy a magpie's nest? Hua Yanran put her hand on the sandalwood box and said quietly, let's check first. No matter whose son he is, since he touched Long Shadow Guard's things, let him spit them out. Huatan nodded, yes. The next day, in the court hall, the emperor received a pile of impeachment papers. There were those who impeached Hwaruiming of Longjingwei for misappropriating the money from his subordinates. There were those who impeached Wang Haoj, a direct bachelor of Wenbei Pavilion, for killing Su Xian, the eldest daughter of the Sunan Bank 20 years ago, and there were those who impeached the king of Qi for misappropriating money from river repairs. Yes, there are also those who impeached the king of Qin to avenge his kindness and killed the British Duke Yang's old lady. After the emperor read the documents one by one, Long Yan was furious on the spot. He scolded all the civil and military officials in the court. The ministers in the court were trembling with fear and did not dare to express their anger. Since the emperor came to the throne, he has been known for his kindness and generosity, and has never shown any anger in the court. You must know that the emperor controls the life and death of everyone present and even every clan. After the emperor rebuked him, he asked Kong Beizao, the minister of Dali Temple, and Yang Songhua, the imperial censor, to come out to listen to the order. I will give you 3 days to find out the truth of the matter and then report it to the police. If there is any violation, you will take off your official uniform and go back to enjoy your life. After saying that, the emperor waved his sleeves and left. Kong Bazao and Yang Songhua knelt down to express their gratitude, and did not get up until the emperor had gone far away. King Qi originally planned to break up the court and ask for an audience with the emperor to ask him to marry Hua Yanran. When the emperor was in a rage, and the repairs on the river were involved, the fire was imminent, so he had no choice but to put out the fire first. As for the marriage, we can only postpone it. Looking aside, Princess Jing'an entered the palace early with her waist badge and asked for a face-to-face interview. After receiving the letter, Gao Gao went out to see Princess Jing'an and shook his head at her. Princess, please come back. The emperor got angry in the court and is still angry at this moment. When Princess Jing'an learned that the emperor was angry, she said that if she had some courage, she would not dare to take on the emperor's anger. He bowed to eunuch Gao and thanked him, then turned around and went to the walking palace where concubine Li lived. Eunuch Gao watched Princess Jing'an leave before turning back to the Hall of Supreme Harmony. What happened in the court quickly reached Hua Yanran. Huata didn't know what was going on with the British Duke, so he asked, what happened to Mrs. Yang of the British Duke? How do you say that the sixth master, King Qin, killed her? Su'er briefly told Huata about the affairs of the British Duke's palace, and finally said, those false accusations were made by the Xian Prince's palace and the British Duke's palace to the outside world, with the purpose of ruining the reputation of King Qin. They wanted to use rumors to make the King of Qin appear unfilial and unvirtuous. They wanted to establish nothing but virtue and virtue. They didn't expect that the emperor would order Dali Temple and Yushitai to conduct a strict investigation. Now there was something exciting to watch. Princess, what should we do next? Huata looked at Hua Yanran and asked, the princess plans to take action. Before Gu Huaya could speak, Wang Qin said first, the princess has already said that she is the only one who can bully her people. Our princess protects her weaklings very well. The princess's person? Who? Huata asked. Su'er glanced at Hua Yanran secretly and replied, who? King Qin. Huata, you can't survive. You have been away from Beijing for half a year and your brain is not enough. Oh, Huadala said in a long voice, patted her head in realization, and said, I'm too old to react. Princess, when will King Qin come to propose marriage? Su'er came over and asked, yes, when will King Qin come to propose marriage? Hua Yanran looked at the crowd and said, what's wrong? Are you too in a hurry than me? Can you not be in a hurry? The king of Qin is more handsome than Panan, and he is more beautiful than Ziji, and he is a dazzlingly beautiful man. Even though he was still Mr. Lulu, he was still the man that all the ladies from aristocratic families were vying to marry when he was not favored by the old ladies of the British Duke. What's more, as the eldest son of the Emperor, King Qin, it's easy to imagine the woman he wants to marry. Wang Qin took the words and said. Sui-er nodded in agreement and said, that is, Princess Xiwen, who came to our house yesterday, followed the prince with her eyes. Wherever the prince went, Princess Xiwen's eyes followed. When the princess and her hairpin ceremony were being held, everyone's eyes were on the princess, except Princess Xiwen, whose eyes fell directly on King Qin. It made me wonder if she had a stiff neck during the night. She turned her head and looked at the prince the whole time. Lu Guang nodded repeatedly. It is indeed as Sui-er said. Yesterday I saw Princess Xiwen turning her head to look at the prince. She looked at him for so long that my head turned to one side. King Yu said, Princess Xiwen's ambition for the prince is clearly written on her face. Yesterday, the young one was greeting guests at the door. King Yu told everyone what happened at the door, talking and gesticulating with contempt on his face. Hua Yanran was sitting behind the desk, making comments to everyone. Sliding the tip of the tongue from the left teeth to the right one by one, and then from the right to the left one by one, thinking about Princess Xiwen in his mind. No wonder, when he saw her in Shi Mansion, she was full of hostility towards her. It turns out that this hostility is because of Qinjian. Su Xiwen encouraged Wang Suimei to come to Huayu Pavilion to cause trouble. Was it also because of King Qin? If so, then Su Xiwen would have known that King Qin treated her unusually, so he would be full of hostility towards her. So, Su Xiwen has been eyeing her for a long time. The more Hua Yanran thought about it, the more she thought about it. The assassin she met on the way back to Beijing was also Su Xiwen's. Wang Qin saw Hua Yanran in a daze and called out softly, Princess, what are you thinking about? Hua Yanran came back to her senses, shook her head and said, it's nothing, just thinking about something small. Wang Qin didn't want to say more when seeing Hua Yanran, nor did she ask any more questions. Sui-er asked, Princess, do we want to take action against the British government harming the prince? Sui-er asked with excitement and expectation. He wanted to know, given the emperor's preference for King Qin, what the emperor would do to Lu Zixun when he knew that Lu Zixun had spread rumors to ruin the reputation of King Qin. Hua Yanran nodded and said, Dali Temple and Yushitai have many things to investigate, which is not easy. We should help and lend a helping hand. Have people give evidence that Lu Zixun spread rumors to Dali Temple and Yushitai. By the way, remember to pick 1 or 2 letters from Wang Haoj and Su Xian and send them over. When Hua Yanran said this, she suddenly thought of something and looked up at Huada. Uncle Hua, let someone go and capture Manking. Huada immediately understood and said, okay, I'll arrange for someone to go there. Wait a minute. After saying that, Hua Yanran shouted towards the door, Lonisara, come in. Ling Dong opened the door and came in. He bent his knees and asked, Princess, what's the matter? Hua Yanran ordered, go and bring my medical box. Sui-er asked, Princess, didn't you say that Feng Guangshen's family will not be moved for the time being? Huada said, the emperor ordered us to investigate Wang Haoj and Su Xian. Huarujun will definitely be alert. If Huarujun is alert, what will he do? Sui-er blurted out, kill people and silence them. So we must capture Manking before Huarujun takes action. Soon, Lonisara came in carrying a medical kit. Gu Huayu took out the Mongolian sweat medicine from the medical box and handed it to Huada. This is the Mongolian sweat medicine, please keep it. Huada took the medicine, turned around and walked out the door. The wise king was busy with the wedding and had not gone to the morning court for several days. But what happened in the morning was reported to him half an hour later without missing a beat. When King Xian learned that the emperor had ordered Dali Temple and Yashitai to investigate King Qin's murder of Mrs. Yang, he began to feel uneasy and hurriedly sent someone to call Lu Zixun for questioning. Huarujun entered the room and saw the wise king sitting behind the desk with a sad face. He asked with concern, "Is the prince encountering something troublesome?" Wang Xian told Huarujun that his father ordered Dali Temple to investigate the murder of Mrs. Yang by King Qin. After hearing this, Huarujun said, "Your Majesty must ask this matter clearly and ask Mr. Lu if he has dealt with it from beginning to end. Don't let anyone get the handle. Otherwise, the emperor will hold him accountable and the prince will be implicated again. This is what the wise king is worried about. Lu Zixun is too unreliable. Why did he let Lu Zixun take over this matter in the first place?" The wise king was filled with regret and sighed repeatedly, "I have been having bad luck lately, and bad things have happened one after another. Alas!" Huarujun comforted him and said, "Don't worry, Your Majesty. Perhaps Mr. Lu has already dealt with the matter from beginning to end." Huarujun said words of relief, but like the wise king, he didn't believe in Lu Zixun at all. The wise king sighed and said, "I hope so. From the time when I was granted the title of king and opened my palace, I have followed the civil and military officials to the early court. 6 years have passed since spring passed and autumn came. In the past 6 years, I have never seen my father get angry in the court, let alone reprimand all civil and military officials. With my father disgusted with corruption, he ordered people to investigate the whereabouts of the money spent on river repairs. I can understand this. But the king of Qin's remarks about persecuting my grandmother were just rumors. They dissipated after a few days. How could my father be serious about it? What's even more outrageous is that Wang Hao's romantic affairs when he was young were investigated by his father, which is really unbelievable." The wise king was extremely depressed. Whether it was Mrs. Yang's affairs or Wang Hao's affairs, they were all closely related to him. Wang Hao is Wang Peiyun's father and his prospective father-in-law. It would do him no good to make a fuss about this matter. The wise king felt that he was being attacked from both sides, which made him physically and mentally exhausted. After the wedding, there is no joy at all. Huarujun pricked up his ears and asked, "Your Majesty asked about Mr. Wang's past in the Prime Minister's mansion." The wise king nodded, "Yes, someone is impeaching Wang Hao today, saying that he has bad personal ethics and killed his former best friend." Huarujun felt nervous and asked, "Master Wang and Mrs. Kui are deeply in love, how come they are so good at each other?" The wise king sighed and said, "Before Wang Hao negotiated the marriage with Kui, he went to Yangzhou to serve abroad. It is said that it was at that time that he met the daughter of the Su family, a merchant in Yangzhou, and fell in love with the Su family's daughter at first sight. Later, Wang Hao was transferred back to the capital, and the Su family came to the capital for Wang Hao. After arriving in the capital, the Su family's daughter knew that Wang Hao had arranged a marriage with the Kui family's daughter. The daughter of the Su family could not withstand the original blow and hanged herself." Huaruming said, "The daughter of the Su family couldn't figure out why she hanged herself. What does it matter to Mr. Wang? Marriage pays attention to being well matched. The Su family is a merchant family and wants to reach the Prime Minister's house. At that time, the Wang family was not the Prime Minister's house, the king was just the Minister of the Ministry of Personnel. The official position of the Minister of Civil Affairs is not low." The wise king said, "For merchants, it is indeed not low. The daughter of the Su family wants to commit suicide. What does it matter to Mr. Guan Wang? The same goes for the people in the Yashitai. Don't they do things with no brains? They dare to report anything. They deserve to be reprimanded by the emperor." Huarujun became angrier as he talked. The wise king in turn advised, "Rujun, don't be angry. Father asked them to investigate, let them investigate. Even if the Wang family did something to the Su family, it was more than 20 years ago. Miss Su only has a pile of bones left, how can they find anything else? End of this chapter. The Rebirth of Space, the lucky girl from a farm family. Author, he would fire every. Chapter 338. Chapter 338 Quick Response. Huarujun calmed down and said, "My lord, you also know that back then, my father suffered a sudden disaster. If it hadn't been for Wang Xiang's generous intervention, where would I be today? Wang Xiang has been as kind to me as a mountain. I will not allow anyone to slander Wang Xiang's family." As he spoke, Huarujun's calmed down mood became aroused again. The wise king hurriedly comforted you and said, "I understand that the king has been kind to you." Huarujun shook his head and said, "The king and the prime minister are my life-saving grace. The prince is the one who knows and appreciates me. The prince and the king are both my benefactors." Huarujun's words about knowing one's encounters and showing kindness made the wise king's heart feel hot, which was very useful to him. I think that when the British Duke recommended Huarujun to him, he was extremely unhappy. He told the British Duke that his virtuous prince's palace was not some dilapidated temple that houses cats and dogs. In his heart, Huarujun was just a concubine of the Hua family, and he was kicked out of the Hua family by Mrs. Liu. He despised him from the bottom of his heart. Because the British Duke said that this was the intention of the king, he accepted Huarujun as his disciple without any difficulty. What he didn't expect was that Huarujun was more capable than he imagined. Huarujun, whether it is general affairs related to business or government affairs related to the court, he can see some skills. His vision and structure are not like those of a concubine. The King Xian even felt that Huarujun's views on current affairs were sometimes a bit deeper than those of the British Duke. In the days since Huarujun came to his side, he has become much more comfortable in doing things. The wise king said, "Wang Haoj is my father-in-law, and I will not allow anyone to smear the Wang family. What the Xian Wang told is the truth. Wang Haoj is Wang Peiyun's father and his father-in-law. Ever since the imperial edict granting marriage was issued, the Wang Xiang's palace and the Xian Wang's palace have been in the same boat. They are involved in each other, and they are both prosperous and destructive. He is aiming for a big position, and he will not allow anyone to damage his reputation." Huarujun stood up and said, "Your Majesty, people from the Ministry of Rites will be here soon. Although the details of the prince's wedding gift have been finalized a few days ago, due to the complicated process, I have to go and check it out first to avoid traveling on business. Regarding Mrs. Yang's matter, the prince has asked Second Master Liu. If there is really something wrong with Mr. Liu, the prince will send Qinjiayun to find out, and we can make a total calculation together. Everything about a wedding is really complicated. A few days ago, officials from the Ministry of Rites came over with a thick stack of documents. King Xian took it and took a look at it. He was dizzy by the dense small regular script. Handlessly handed the document to Huarujun and asked the officials of the Ministry of Rites to hand over the matter to Huarujun. Let Huarujun figure it out and then tell him. Huarujun did not disappoint the Xian Wang. He went through the wedding process in detail and explained everything to the Xian Wang in detail. This is much easier than letting the wise king see it for himself. The wise king nodded, stood up, and said, "Go and do your work. When Zigzun comes, I will ask him carefully." The wise king said as he sent the flowers and auspicious coins out. "Your Majesty, there is no need to send him off. I can just go there myself. It doesn't matter." Before the wise king finished speaking, Qinjiayun announced outside the door, "Your Majesty, Second Master Liu is here." The wise king raised his voice and said, "Please come in. Rujun, I won't see you off." Huarujun bowed to the wise king and then exited the room. On the corridor, Huarujun met Lu Zigzun head-on. He wanted to bow down and greet him, but Lu Zigzun walked past Huarujun with his head held high without squinting, as if Huarujun didn't exist at all. Looking at the arrogant Lu Zixun, Feng Xinming was so angry that he spat on the ground and muttered in a low voice, "You are a guy who fails to accomplish anything but fails a lot. How great is he?" Bah! Huarujun glanced at Feng Xinming, raised his legs and walked forward. Seeing Huarujun walking forward, Feng Xinming hurriedly followed him. Huarujun slowed down when he saw Feng Xinming following him. He turned his head and said, "Hurry back and take your mother to Jinghu Villa in the north of the city. Don't delay on the way. Be quick. Do you understand?" Seeing Huarujun's solemn expression, Feng Xinming asked nervously, "Sir, what happened?" Huarujun said, "The emperor has ordered Dali Temple to investigate the matter between Wang Haoj and Su Xian." Huarujun only mentioned something, and Feng Xinming immediately understood and said, "Thank you, sir. I'll go back immediately." Huarujun confessed, "After sending Ant-Man to Jinghu Villa, you should stay there and take shelter there for a while." Feng Xinming looked at Huaruming with a blank expression, "Master." Huarujun looked at the confused Feng Xinming and explained, "If they know Ant-Man's identity, they will also know the identity of your family. They are not afraid of 10,000, but just in case, so they hide it first." Feng Xinming suddenly understood, leaned forward and said, "Thank you very much, I understand. Father and the others. Don't worry about this, I will ask someone to notify Uncle Feng and Xing Guang they will come to Jinghu Villa soon." Feng Xinming bowed again, "Thank you very much. Go quickly. If you go out from here, someone may stare at you, so be cautious when you get home, leave through the tunnel and set the house on fire. Do you understand?" Feng Xinming nodded and left quickly. Feng Xinming came out of Prince Yen's mansion and rode straight to Wei Lane in the north of the city. Along the way, Feng Xinming thought about Huarujun's words. The emperor sent people to investigate Su Xian's affairs, and he would inevitably investigate the people around Su Xian. My mother-in-law was once the person who served around Su Xian. Anyang is their first choice. How much do they know? Which step will be found? At that time, after Su Xian died, Sujin sent out the people around Su Xian. It was at that time that my mother left the Su family and stayed with her father. Later, they had 3 brothers and sisters. Others think that Anyang is the judge, but in fact, Anyang is from the Shangguan family. When Mr. Wang went to Yangzhou to take up his post, the old lady was worried and sent someone to follow him secretly. With this errand, Mom and Dad are in love with each other. Feng Xinming was so anxious that he ran to Wei Lane in one breath, opened the door and entered the house. Seeing that everything at home was as usual, he felt relieved and shouted, "Auntie!" Manqing was working in the kitchen when she heard Feng Xinming's voice. She stuck her head out and asked, "Xinming is back, why are you back so early today?" Feng Xinming tied his horse to the osmanthus tree in the yard and said with a smile, "There isn't much to do today. I asked me to come back first." Manqing said, "That's good, come over and help me wash the vegetables. Your father and brother will be back soon." "Okay, here we go." Feng Xinming answered Manqing while looking around secretly. Feng Xinming entered the room, pulled Manqing, and said in a loud voice, "Anyang, let's steam some rice cakes to eat today." "Anyang, we are exposed, evacuate quickly," he said the last sentence in a low voice. Manqing was stunned for a moment, then understood and said in a cooperative voice, "Okay, you light the fire, and I'll get the rice cakes." After saying that, Feng Xinming whispered, "Mom, you go first, I will tell you to set fire to the house." "Okay," Manqing nodded and walked inside. "I'll wait for you at the exit." "Got it, I'll be right away." The kitchen is filled with firewood, all dry wood that is easy to light, so that it can be set on fire when you leave one day. Feng Xinming lit the fire and watched the flames keep rising upward until it became a prairie fire. Then he got into the cave. After walking for a short distance, Feng Xinming pressed the button. The tunnel behind him immediately collapsed, blocking the road ahead. When Huada and his people rushed to the north of the city, they saw thick smoke rising from Wei Lane, and a bad premonition suddenly arose in his heart. He rode his horse and rushed to the entrance of Wei Alley. Junji came over and reported, "Uncle Hua, the Feng family is in trouble." Huada asked, "Aren't you watching? You knew there was a fire, why didn't you put out the fire?" Junji leaned back and said, "I also want to save the little one, but the fire is too big and there is not even a water tank in the yard. How can I save him without water? I am helpless." Huada looked at the house filled with flames and asked, "Is there anyone in the house?" In a short period of time, the fire became so intense. This was not an accident, someone did it on purpose. Junji nodded and said, "Yes, just a quarter of an hour ago, Feng Xinming came back on horseback, and Feng Xinming's mother-in-law was also at home." "There's a fire and no one has come out?" Huada asked, looking at the house. Junji shook his head and said, "The younger ones have been staying here and haven't seen anyone come out." Huada's heart sank and he said, "The people have escaped. Hurry up to the horse and carriage store and see if Feng Guangsheng is still there." Junji bowed down and got on his horse. "Uncle Hua, the little one will go right away." Huada waved his hand and warned, "Be careful." Junji rode away. Huada turned around and ordered King Yi, "Go to Feng Xingguang's cloth village and see if he is there." King Yi bowed and responded, "Okay, little one, let's go right now." Huada looked at the house with the blazing fire. Neighbors were carrying water in basins and buckets. Men and women were walking through the streets, pouring basins of water on the fire. Huada noticed that the small courtyard was very spacious, and the house was surrounded by gardens with all kinds of flowers and plants. This house was actually a small courtyard with no surroundings. It seems that the other party has been prepared for a long time. If the matter is exposed, it will be burned to the ground. Feng Xinming would not be stupid enough to burn himself to death. Before anyone came out, there must be a tunnel in the house, and they left through the tunnel. Huada looked around. He wanted to see where the other exit of the tunnel was. On the other side, Feng Xinming took Man Qing out of the stable of a house across the street, and then went to the upper room. Under the veranda at the door of the upper room, the people sitting and drinking tea saw them. They stood up in surprise, bowed towards the two of them and said, "Ant-Man, second master, what happened?" Feng Xinming said, "The emperor ordered the people at Dali Temple to investigate the matter between Su Xian and Mr. Wang. The master asked my mother and I to take refuge at Jinghu Villa in the north of the city, and trouble Mr. Ming to see me and my mother off." After hearing this, Mr. Ming immediately responded, "Okay, you two, wait a moment, we'll get down and drive over." After saying that, Mr. Ming went inside first, picked up his riding whip and went to the backyard. After a while, a very ordinary-looking carriage came over. Feng Xinming helped Manking get into the car first, and then followed him. Manking asked worriedly, "Where are your father and brother? What should I do?" Feng Xinming comforted him, "Don't worry, Grandma, my master asked us to go there first. Dad and brother, my master will let someone notify them, and they will go directly to Jinghu Villa." Man Qing's heart dropped. "Okay, thank you very much, master." Shunfan's carriage drove past Beiwajing shop. After receiving the report from Huarujun's messenger, Feng Guangsheng turned around and told his subordinates a few words before walking towards the backyard. Feng Guangsheng looked around and ducked into the firewood room. After Feng Guangsheng entered the firewood room, he entered the yard next door through the secret door of the firewood room, which was a grocery store next to the carriage and horse lane. There was no one in the backyard of the grocery store at this time. Feng Guangsheng walked to the small kitchen built against the wall with ease. Similarly, he walked through the secret door of the kitchen. Enter the backyard of Wang Mingxuan Rouge shop. The old man who was cleaning the courtyard stopped and bowed when he saw Feng Guangsheng. Master Feng, where are you going? Feng Guangsheng said, my master asked me to go to Jinghu Villa. Lao Zhang, please see me off. Lao Zhang put down his broom, nodded and said, okay, little one, let's go and catch the car. Soon, a carriage wrapped in navy blue muslin drove out of Wang Mingxuan's backyard and almost collided with Junqi, who was riding over. Junqi apologized profusely to Lao Zhang, I'm sorry, I was a little impatient and almost bumped into my husband. I'd like to apologize to my husband here. Lao Zhang was anxious to see Feng Guangsheng off, only nodded slightly to Junqi, and then drove away. Junqi looked at the carriage leaving, dismounted, led the horse to the main street, entered the tea house opposite the carriage shop, sat opposite Zhengzhen and asked, how is it? Is Feng Guangsheng in the shop? Zhengzhen looked up at Junqi and asked, why are you here? Feng Guangsheng is in the shop, and he just sent his guests out. Junqi picked up the teacup on the table and took a sip of tea. He turned to look at the traffic and said, the Feng family house in Wei Lane was flooded. The fire was very strong. Feng Xinming and Man Qing did not come out. Uncle Hua said that these two people might have escaped. Let me see if Feng Guangsheng is still in the shop. Escaped? Junqi nodded, yes, escaped. Where are the people following you? Why are you the only one here? Zhengzhen said, Shinan and Shisheng are in the alley in the backyard of the carriage and horse shop. Didn't you see them when you came from there just now? Junqi shook his head, raised his head and looked at the carriage shop again. I didn't see them, so I went to the shop to have a look. If Feng Guangsheng had received the letter, I would have probably escaped. Zhengzhen nodded, okay. Junqi went downstairs, left the tea house, and crossed the street to the carriage shop. After a long time, Junqi returned to the tea house and said to Zhengzhen, let's go, he is no longer in the shop. Zhengzhen frowned, I didn't see him come out. How did he leave? Junqi shook his head, I don't know. Let's go back and report to the princess. Hua Yanran listened to the reports of several people and put her head on her hands in deep thought. She thought her reaction was fast enough, but unexpectedly, Hua Rujun was faster than her. It seemed that she had met her opponent. Inexplicably, Hua Yanran was a little excited. She liked to fight against powerful opponents. Sui Er said, Hua Rujun should not be underestimated. He is well informed and responds quickly. His people are also very capable of action. Han Shi asked, Princess, what should we do next? Hua Yanran thought for a while and said, don't worry, just a few soldiers and generals are gone. Hua Rujun is still there. Let's keep an eye on Hua Rujun. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Rebirth of Space, the lucky girl from a farm family. Author, he would fire every. Chapter 339. Chapter 339 Plan. Junqi, Zhengzhen, and Shinan stood by the side with their heads lowered and shoulders slumped. The errands were not done well, and the three of them felt ashamed to see everyone, like eggplants beaten by frost, without any energy. Huada glanced at the three of them and said, okay, one by one. The princess didn't blame you. Why are you so embarrassed? Waiting for the princess to comfort you? You are really promising. Zhengzhen felt even more guilty, and his face turned red. He didn't do his job well, so the county chief punished him once or twice, which made him feel better. But the princess didn't say a single serious word. Instead, his heart felt numb and he had nowhere to go. Hua Yanran looked at the three of them and said, Uncle Hua, they feel uncomfortable, so don't scold them. After saying that, Hua Yanran said to the three of them, I don't blame you for what happened today. In just a few years after Hua Su's death, Huarujun was able to control the real power of Long Shadow Guard in his hands. This person is not simple. Jungzin said, "Thank you, princess. I just can't figure it out. I have been staring at the car and horse carriage all the time. How did he escape from under my eyes?" King Yi said, "I can't figure this out either. I checked the house in Wei Lane. There was no tunnel in the house. How did Feng Xinming and his mother escape? Two big living people seem to have disappeared from the world. They disappeared for no reason. It was really a ghost." Hua Yanran first thought of a space like Qingfeng, but she quickly rejected her hypothesis. If they had space, they could do anything, so why would they be willing to be subordinates? With their ambition, they have long been kings and hegemons, and they will not just covet the money of Long Shadow Guard. Hua Yanran said, "Feng Xinming and his mother cannot disappear out of thin air. There must be a tunnel in that house, but we haven't found it yet." Jungzin asked, "Is there a tunnel over there where the carriages and horses go?" "Near Beiwa Well is Beiwa Lake." Hua Yanran thought about it and realized that with the current construction level, she would not dare to dig a tunnel near the lake. Hua Yanran shook her head and said, "Near Beiwa Well is Beiwa Lake. There should be no tunnels there." Then how did Feng Guangsheng leave the shop? Sui Er took over the words. "There are two possibilities. One is that Feng Guangsheng has been in the shop and has not left. The other possibility is that Feng Guangsheng left from another shop." Huadun nodded and said, "It is very possible to leave from other shops." Sui Er continued, "Then there is a discrepancy in the information we have inquired about. Huarujun's shop should be far more than the ones we have inquired about." Huada looked at Hua Yanran and said, "Princess, Manqing is not in our hands. Wang Haoj doesn't have enough witnesses." Hua Yanran said, "The people from Dali Temple will investigate the matter between Wang Haoj and Su Xian, so we don't have to worry about it. Huarujun risked being exposed to save Manqing, which proved that our previous guess was right. Manqing is from the Shangguan family. We urgently need to find out the relationship between the Shangguan family and Huarujun." Huadun nodded, "The princess is right. Right now, our top priority is to investigate the relationship between Huarujun and the Shangguan family. The Prime Minister's mansion is decorated with lights and colorful decorations everywhere. The maids and women are all wearing bright clothes and smiling brightly. They walk with their clothes flowing in the wind. However, this palpable joy only flows among the servants in the mansion. The Prime Minister, the old lady Shangguan, their two sons and their daughter-in-law were gathered in the Prime Minister's study, all with solemn expressions. Mrs. Kui sat on the brocade stool under the window angrily, wiping the corners of her eyes with a handkerchief from time to time. Ms. Kui was feeling bitter. She had been married to Wang Haoj for 20 years and had children for him. Her heart was full of him, she regarded him as her heaven, and she thought of him in everything. He treated her like a guest, and in the eyes of others, they were equal in love and affection. Suddenly one day, reality gave her a hard blow. She suddenly understood that he was not respectful to her, but was being polite with a sense of alienation. His heart had already been given to another woman. What does she mean to him? She felt like a joke. The Prime Minister sat at the top, looked at the eldest son kneeling in the middle of the room, and said, "Get up." Mrs. Shangguan sighed and advised, "Listen to your father and get up." Wang Haoj stood up from the ground after thanking him. He leaned forward and said, "My son is unfilial, young and ignorant, and has brought trouble to the family." Mrs. Shangguan waved her hand and said, "Okay, what happened in the past is in the past, and repenting is of no use. We should focus on the present, and sum up, how to get through this critical moment." Wang Haoj leaned forward again and replied respectfully, "Yes, my mother is right. My son will follow his mother's arrangements." Mrs. Shangguan looked at Mrs. Kui wiping tears under her window. It had been several days since the rumors on the street came into the house, and she had been crying every day. It was really endless. Madame Shangguan felt a little more annoyed and impatient. She suppressed the displeasure in her heart, moved her eyes away from Mrs. Kui, and turned to look at the Wang Xiang. Mr. Xiang, what should we do next? Everyone turned their attention to Wang Xiang. The Prime Minister raised his hand and pressed his temples, looked around at everyone in the study, and after a moment, said slowly, I have been in a high position for many years. My current position can be said to be below one person, above 10,000 people, and there are many people who covet me. There is something going on at home today, as I expected. A big tree attracts the wind, it is inevitable to attract people's jealousy. Therefore, the old lady has always said that children at home should be cautious when doing things outside and not make mistakes, otherwise it will bring disaster to the family. Taking what happened this time as an example, if Sister Yun could be more humble and not have a quarrel with Princess Yan Ran, she would not have triggered the series of incidents that followed. I usually teach you to wait, the wind rises at the end of Qingping, and the waves form between gentle waves. As a descendant of the Wang family, you must act in a low-key manner and not be ostentatious. I have reminded Sister Yun more than once that her temper needs to change. As Kui listened to Wang Xiang's reprimand, her dissatisfaction grew like weeds. When she heard that Wang Xiang once again put the blame on her daughter, Mrs. Kui was so angry that she raised her voice and interrupted Wang Xiang's words. My wife disagreed with what my father said. Yun'er was a young, energetic, and impatient child. He had a quarrel with Princess Yan Ran. In the final analysis, it was just a quarrel between children. How could it become a serious crime? Today's affairs in the house were caused by the private exchanges that the master had with others many years ago. They fell into the hands of others and became the handle of others. This matter has nothing to do with Yun'er. Father, please don't blame Yun'er for this matter. Yun'er is a child and cannot afford to bear such a heavy responsibility. Having said that, my father asked himself, even if Yun'er was cautious, wouldn't others be able to find another opportunity to stab us? As my father said, he has been in a high position for many years, and his big tree attracts the wind and attracts people's jealousy. People who are interested have been keeping an eye on our house for a long time. It was caused by my master in the past, and now it is the result of my father being in a high position and being hated by others. The disaster in our house today is unavoidable. Sister Yun was just unlucky and became the trigger for this matter. No one is stupid, and their hearts are as clear as a mirror. Please don't put the blame on Yun'er. As Yun's mother, I feel uncomfortable hearing people blame Yun'er again and again. Ms. Kui poured out the resentment in her heart and expressed her position. She felt much better. Everyone looked at Ms. Kui blankly, and the room was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. You must know that in this family, Wang Xiang is the real patriarch. For many years, as long as the king and prime minister spoke, even the old lady Shangguan would listen quietly. The first time, someone interrupted the king's speech and questioned his words, how to prevent everyone from being stunned. Seeing everyone staring at her, Ms. Kui simply did nothing and continued to express her inner thoughts. Sister Yun's wedding is coming soon, and there are a lot of things that need to be sorted out in the house. Instead of saying who is right and who is wrong here, let's think about how to deal with the situation at hand. The dowry will be delivered early tomorrow morning, and people from the Ministry of Etiquette will come to verify the procedures today. And at this time, there are still many guests in the house who need to be entertained. We, as hosts, stay here for a long time without showing up, neglecting the guests, and even getting tongue-tied. Wang Haohua did not agree with Kui's point of view. Now the people from Dali Temple and Yushitai are starting to investigate what happened back then. Once this matter is found out, have you ever thought about it? How big a blow will this matter have to our family? Kui Shi retorted, how dare I ask my second brother, if we gather here to discuss it, we won't investigate Dali Temple and Yushitai. Wang Haohua was refuted and couldn't answer, but he didn't reply to Kui, and felt that he had lost his status, so he said, "Sister-in-law is from a womanly family, what do you know? If sister-in-law is worried about neglecting the guests, she should go out to entertain one or two first, that's it." Mrs. Kui stood up obediently and said to the king and Mrs. Shangguan, "My wife thinks that Dali Temple and Yashitai were ordered by the emperor to investigate this matter, so we can just cooperate with them in the investigation. What we should do now is to take care of Yunus' marriage. The daughter-in-law has limited knowledge, and I can't think of a good idea here, so I go outside to greet the guests." Chui's words were harsh and not pleasant at all. Wang Haoj looked at his sullen parents and said, "Go and do your work first." Mrs. Kui looked at Wang Haoj and sneered in her heart. I blessed myself again and turned around and left the study. Wang Haohua looked away from the door and said, "The family is worried about the eldest brother. The eldest brother is the sister-in-law's husband and her god. If something happens to her husband, how can she ignore it?" Mrs. Shangwen's face was gloomy. It took her a while to calm down her anger, and she said, "Ms. Kui's words don't sound good, but this is the truth. What we have to do now is to handle Yunus' marriage smoothly. You also go out to greet the guests." "Anayang," Wang Haohua shouted. Old Madame Shangguan waved her hand, "Go." Wang Haohua, Wang Haoj and Mr. Li left the house one after another. The Prime Minister sighed heavily and sat back on the group chair, with a look of exhaustion on his face. Mrs. Shangguan advised, "I know what I am worried about." Mrs. Kui's words reminded me that after more than 20 years, even if Dali Temple investigates, what will they find? "Master, please relax." Wang Xiang said, "This is not what the old lady is worried about." "What are you worried about, sir?" Mrs. Shangguan asked. The king looked up at the sky and sighed heavily again. "The emperor has changed. Before things like this happened today, the emperor would have reprimanded him at most and would never get angry in the court. After King Qin came back, the emperor's attitude changed. The old lady has to worry." Mrs. Shangguan understood what the king was referring to. She frowned and asked, "Is it because the emperor asked King Qin to go to the Ministry of Punishment because of what happened back then?" The Prime Minister nodded slightly, "It should be. Otherwise, why would King Qin go to the Ministry of Punishment if he is so good? As a prince, it was normal for the King of Qin to go to the 6 ministries to familiarize himself with government affairs. Given the emperor's preference for the King of Qin, it seems normal for me to let the King of Qin go to the Ministry of Rights, the Ministry of Officials, and even the Ministry of War, but the emperor chose to let the King of Qin go to the Ministry of Punishments." The next words were not spoken by the Prime Minister, and the worry in his words was undisguised. Mrs. Shangguan was deep in thought. She understood the Prime Minister's worries. She was equally worried about the lives of hundreds of people in the Prime Minister's house. "Sir, let's be prepared." The Prime Minister cast his gaze on Mrs. Shangguan, her eyes full of determination and cruelty. "We are not just preparing for 2 things, we have to plan for 3. When Wang Xiang saw Shangguan's old lady, she looked at him doubtfully and explained, "Brother Zhe's matter may be the emperor's way of asking for advice. The emperor wanted to find out what happened back then, but he didn't know where to start. This incident happened to happen, so the emperor took advantage of it and used it to find clues about the past." Mrs. Shangguan asked, "What do you mean, sir, that the emperor is already suspicious of us?" The Prime Minister looked at Mrs. Shangguan, nodded and said, "Father, you must have been suspicious of me for some time. So, I speculate that if Brother Zhe cannot get through this matter, he will inevitably be demoted. Let's take the opportunity to let Zhe Geer go out to sea with the caravan and get a foothold there. If a wise king comes to power, we will bring them back. If it is anything like that, we will escape overseas together." Mrs. Shangguan nodded, "Okay, do as the master says." Do you want to tell Brother Zhe about this? The Prime Minister shook his head and said, it's enough for us to know these things. There's no need to tell them. Brother Zhe's temperament follows that of my husband, and he is not as calm as his daughter-in-law when things happen. Look at Ms. Kui, she is annoyed just by saying a few words. This personality is like yours. Ms. Shangguan pursed her lips and smiled, a husband and wife cannot both be strong or weak. It is important to support each other. It's not that we, Brother Zhe, don't have ideas when things happen. The main thing is that this matter involves him. He is a party involved and is deeply involved in the situation. It is normal for him to not see the situation clearly. Isn't this the reason why the authorities are confused but bystanders are clear? Look at him, when he talks about things, he always speaks the truth. In the eyes of Ms. Shangguan, her own son is excellent in everything, and she cannot tolerate others saying anything bad about him. Why doesn't the Prime Minister understand that Ms. Shangguan protects the calf? Smiling slightly, he said, what Madam said is very appropriate. Brother Zhe, Brother Hua, and Brother Zhe are both smart people. Let's go outside and have a face-to-face meeting, so as not to waste words. Prime Minister Wang stood up as he spoke. Ms. Shangguan stood up and said, okay, let's get together. Thank you book friend Ye for the reward, thank you for the encouragement. Many thanks. Thank you book friends for your votes, thank you. Bow and thank you. End of this chapter. The Rebirth of Space, the lucky girl from a farm family. Author, he would fire every. Chapter 340. Chapter 340, Recruited. Someone from Huayanran delivered the letter, and Dolly Temple quickly identified Lu Zixun as the person who was causing trouble behind the scenes and framed and discredited the king of Qin. On the second day of the Xian Wang's wedding, Lu Zixun was gambling vigorously in the gambling house and was taken away by people from Dolly Temple. It is related to the reputation of King Qin, and this matter also involves the British Duke's palace, and behind the British Duke's palace are the concubine and the Prince Yen's palace in the palace. After receiving the report, Kong Beizhou turned around and went to Yashitai to look for Yang Songhua. Yang Songhua was the second son of Bachelor Yang. He was the same year as Kong Beizhou. At the same time, Kong Beizhou was also a student of Bachelor Yang. The two had been close friends since they were children. Dolly Temple and Yashitai are not far apart. When they have free time, they often get together to drink tea and chat. Yang Songhua heard that Kong Beizhou had come through the government office, so he went out personally to welcome him. Brother Bai Zhao is here, I'm about to go to your place. Kong Beizhou turned around and walked back, I'm here to find you. Come to my place. If you have something to discuss, let's talk while walking. Yang Songhua nodded, okay, what's the matter? Let's talk while walking. After speaking, Yang Songhua turned to his entourage and ordered, go and put away the documents on my desk and close the door. The entourage bowed down and turned to leave. Brother Bai Zhao, please. Yang Songhua politely let Kong Beizhou go forward, and he was half a step behind him. Brother Bai Zhao, come here. Is there any progress in the case? Kong Beizhou nodded as he walked, yes. I don't know which case it is. The emperor ordered them to investigate 4 cases at once, and he had to ask one more question. Kong Beizhou said, it is related to the case of King Qin's murder of Ms. Yang. Dolly Temple has received many anonymous reports in the past 2 days, and a dozen people have been arrested for spreading rumors. These people all said they were ordered by the second master of the British government. I have already asked Lu Er to be arrested. Yang Songhua stopped, nodded in realization and said, so that's it? I said, Qinjian, Qin Wang's temperament will not do such cruel things. Kong Beizhou nodded, it is said that you look at your elders when you are young, and you look at your old age when you are 3 years old. King Qin has followed Ye Shangshu since he was a child and often goes to your house. Speaking of which, we have all grown up watching King Qin. You and I both know what King Qin's character is like. How could King Qin do such a thing? Yang Songhua sighed, the same goes for Lu Er. After all, he and the King of Qin have been brothers for many years, so how could he do such a despicable thing as making a false accusation? The Lu family is the family of generals. This is too bad. It's upright. Kong Beizao sighed and said worriedly, that's why I'm worried about the secrets coming from the house after the trial. There is a queen and a prince behind the British palace. So, I didn't dare to hand over this matter. I came here to seek advice from you. I'm afraid we have to examine this matter in person and report it to the emperor later. Both of them have been in the officialdom for many years. They know how to handle matters related to the royal family's reputation. Yang Songhua nodded and said, Brother Bai Zhao is thoughtful. When it comes to royal matters, we need to be more cautious. The two walked while talking, and soon arrived at Dali Temple. Hong Bazao let Yang Songhua into the house, and after some arrangements, he asked someone to bring Lu Zixun into the house. Lu Zixun was brought into the house. When he looked up and saw Hong Bazao, the minister of Dali Temple, and Yang Songhua, the imperial censor, sitting in the court in person, he was immediately frightened to death. Lu Zixun is a typical bastard. At home or in front of familiar people, he will fly up, but when he comes to an unfamiliar environment, he will immediately give up. Kong Beizao saw that the audience was shaking with nervousness and Lu Zixun quickly exchanged glances with Yang Songhua. Turning his head to look at Lu Zixun, he asked in a deep voice, Lu Zixun, do you know why I brought you here? Do you know that you are wrong? If you don't want to suffer, hurry up and bring it in. When Lu Zixun was caught, he was anxious and thinking about how to win back the lost money. You must know that the silver he lost today was the last silver tapuzi used to buy horses and chariots. He originally wanted to use the silver to get back the money he lost before. Lu Zixun blurted out, Sir, I was obsessed with it, so I embezzled public funds. I promise, I will find a way to make up for the 50,000 taels of silver. After hearing this, Kong Beizao and Yang Songhua felt their hearts pounding, and they looked at each other again. They never expected that the case of falsely accusing the king of Qin would also be found to be corrupt. Yang Songhua asked in a deep voice, Did you misappropriate 50,000 taels of silver? After listening to Yang Songhua's question, Lu Zixun realized that he had made a mistake. Why didn't he just admit it? Lu Zixun wished he could give himself 2 slaps. The words have been spoken, it's too late to regret. Although Yang Songhua is a scholar, he looks anything but polite. He has a pair of sword-shaped eyebrows on his face, which gives him a naturally majestic look. When he lowers his face to ask questions in a deep voice, it makes people even more frightened. Lu Zixun raised his head and met Yang Songhua's gaze, and quickly avoided it with a guilty conscience. Kong Beizao saw Lu Zixun's eyes dodge, he slapped the gavel and scolded, If you don't recruit him honestly, then you will be punished. Come and flog him, first give him 20 big boards. 2 government officials came up with long boards. Where has Lu Zixun seen such a formation? When he saw the board that was taller than a person, he was so frightened that he begged for mercy, 2 adults, please don't go to jail. I will attack you. I will attack you all. Kong Beizao looked at the bookkeeper beside him and ordered, record the good students. The master bowed and responded, Yes, sir. Yang Songhua looked at Lu Zixun and asked, To be honest, how many times have you embezzled money from MOMO in total? Please report the time and amount one by one. Where did the money from MOMO be used? Yang Songhua and Kong Beizao used coercion and inducement, and Lu Zixun not only explained all the corruption over the years, 2 adults, I did misappropriate public funds before, but I tried to make up for it afterwards. A few days ago, My boss asked me to be responsible for purchasing war horses and chariots, and put the money for the purchased materials with me. Yang Songhua asked, so, you took this money and gambled it? Lu Zixun bowed his head and said, the master said that I have been in good luck recently and have good fortune, so I gave it a try. Kong Bizao asked, how much silver is the total payment for this batch of supplies? Lu Zixun replied guiltily, 150,000 taels of silver. Yang Songhua and Kong Bazao couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. Kong Bazao said, as for the money for official business, Tapu Temple will check it personally. In addition to being greedy and misappropriating public funds, you have fabricated facts and framed the King of Qin out of thin air. Please tell me carefully. The King of Qin is the prince and the eldest son of the emperor. You have to know that in this dynasty, it is a serious crime to frame a prince. Lu Zixun looked at Kong Bazao in fear, a serious crime. Facing Lu Zixun's blank face, Kong Bazao was extremely speechless. After a moment, he asked, don't you know that framing the prince is a serious crime? Lu Zixun shook his head and nodded honestly, I don't know. It's just a few words, King Qin won't be short of meat. Kong Bazao was shocked by Lu Zixun's words. After a while, he said, in this dynasty, if you falsely accuse others, you will be punished by the crime of rebellion. Do you know what the crime of rebellion is? Lu Zixun shook his head. Kong Bizao patiently explained, for example, if you falsely accuse someone of murder, according to the law, the murderer should be beheaded. But it turns out that you falsely accused others, then you are the false accuser and you will be questioned and executed. This is still the crime of false accusation against ordinary people. The person you are falsely accusing is the prince, which is disrespectful and contemptuous of the imperial power. You will be punished to death. When Lu Zixun heard that he was going to be questioned and beheaded, he was already in a mess. He immediately argued, I didn't come up with this idea to frame the King of Qin. It came from my grandfather, the prince, the wise king, it came from them. I am just running errands for my grandfather and the prince. Kong Bazao reminded, you have to think clearly. If you talk nonsense, you will be punished with an additional penalty. Lu Zixun was afraid of being questioned, so he repeatedly promised, everything I said is true, I was really just running errands. Kong Bizao looked at Lu Zixun who was slumped on the ground and ordered his subordinates, take him down and take good care of him. The subordinates took Lu Zixun under custody. Kong Bizao took the record of Lu Zixun's paintings from the master's hand and said to Yang Songhua, let's go into the palace to meet the saint. The two of them went to the palace and handed over the certificate. Soon, they received a message from the chamberlain. The Xian king and the Xian princess went to the palace early in the morning to meet their elders, greeted the empresses of each palace, and returned to Jianqing Palace to bid farewell to the emperor. The emperor was talking to King Xian and Princess Xian when the chamberlain handed in the invitation from Kong Bazao and Yang Songhua. Seeing that the emperor was busy with something, King Xian got up and left with Princess Xian. Kong Bazao and Yang Songhua followed the chamberlain to the imperial study room, and met the Xian king and Xian princess in court uniforms on the corridor at the entrance of Jianqing Palace. Kong Bazao and Yang Songhua stopped to pay homage to King Xian and Princess Xian. The Xian dynasty and the two of them nodded slightly, and led the Xian princess past them to the palace entrance. After getting on the carriage of Prince Xian's palace, Prince Xian Chenjiun ordered, let someone go and find out why Kong Bazao and Yang Songhua came to the palace to meet the Holy Spirit. Just as Chen Yun sent people to leave, Yang Jining, who was beside Huarujun, came over and reported, Your Majesty, Second Master Lu was taken away by people from Dali Temple in the gambling house. Wang Piyun saw that the wise king's face was covered with frost, and he was so frightened that he didn't know what to do. After a moment, the wise king calmed down his emotions and raised his voice and ordered, Go back to the house. While the carriage was moving forward, a series of instructions were transferred from the carriage. Send someone to invite the Duke of the country to come to the palace. Send someone to invite Chen's staff to the palace. Send someone to invite Mr. Qin to the palace. Send someone to ask for Fang Shangshu. Forget it, don't go to Fang Shangshu for now. The wise king returned to the palace and said to Wang Piyun, the princess will go back to the backyard first. The king has something to deal with and has no time to go back to the backyard during the day. Please take good care of the princess. Without waiting for Wang Piyun to reply, the wise king walked towards the study in the outer courtyard. Huarujun saw the wise king coming and hurriedly greeted him. The wise king didn't wait for him to bow down and asked, "Didn't I tell you not to let Zigzun go to the gambling house again?" Huarujun leaned forward and said, "Your Majesty, please listen to me. Over at the gambling house, I did tell you that Mr. Lu is not allowed to enter the gambling house again. The last thing Mr. Lu recently entered was not my gambling house, but the feud gambling house. Second master was also taken away by people from Dali Temple at feud gambling house today." The wise king asked, "Who owns feud gambling house?" Huarujun replied, "Feud gambling house is an industry under Yegu's name. The property under Yegu's name, that Yegu who comes and goes without a trace in the world," the wise king asked with a frown. Huarujun nodded and said, "Exactly." The wise king asked, "Have you seen Yegu himself?" Huarujun shook his head and said, "Your Majesty, I have never seen Yegu before. I have only seen the big boss of feud gambling house with an open face." When King Qin returned to the palace, Jin came over and reported, "Your Majesty, people from Dali Temple arrested Lu Zigzun at feud gambling house. I went to feud gambling house to meet Zhang Da. Zhang Da told me that within 5 days, Lu Zigzun lost a total of 150,000 taels of silver." King Qin's face darkened slightly and he said, "He is so courageous. He dared to gamble with all the 150,000 taels of silver. I understand, go and see if there is any news from Yuan." As soon as King Qin finished speaking, Leshun came in and said, "Your Majesty, please see me." "Please come in," King Qin said immediately. "Come and retreat smoothly," just like an opened the curtain and came in. King Qin asked, "Who is in charge of the trial over at Dali Temple? What is the result?" Yuan bowed to the king of Qin and reported, "Your Majesty, after Mr. Lu was brought to Dali Temple, Mr. Kong and Mr. Yang jointly tried the case. Now Mr. Lu is being detained in Dali Temple. Master Kong and Master Yang went to the palace to meet the saint. Mr. Lu confessed on the spot that he had been involved in gambling since the year before last. He had embezzled public funds more than once. He had managed to make up for the money he had embezzled before. Only the 150,000 taels of silver he had misappropriated recently had not yet been made up. Furthermore, regarding the matter of framing the prince, Mr. Lu insisted that he was instructed by the wise king and the duke of the country. That guy was really useless." Mr. Kong and Mr. Yang said a few harsh words with a straight face, and then they were so frightened that they could do anything. Jin sneered with disgust on his face, "How can that guy be able to resist trouble? His cruelty is only for the weak and helpless people. People like Mr. Lu, who were born in the general family, have humiliated the ranks of the British government. Ancestors." King Qin sneered and said, "Don't ask too much of him. He didn't wet his pants on the spot, so he's already worthy of everyone." When it came to Lu Zigzun peed his pants, Yuan and Rumin smiled knowingly. Years ago, Lu Zigzun used himself to compare with Lu Zikin and often bullied Lu Zikin. Lu Zikin had Lu Zigzun kidnapped, blindfolded him, took him to an empty courtyard in the south of the city, and then had him tied to a tree in the yard. They clearly remembered that the two burly men did not say a word from the beginning to the end, only using their shining daggers to play the trick of piercing paper figures in front of Lu Zigzun. Lu Zigzun was so frightened that he wet his pants. Yuan said with a smile, "Yes, if the second master peed his pants in Dali Temple, everyone present would be embarrassed." Ru Yan took over the words, if you really peed, it would be so embarrassing. King Qin looked up at Ryuan and said, let's wait and see how the Xian Prince's palace and the British Duke's palace respond. In addition, go and deliver a letter to 4th Master Zhang and ask him to go down to Chang'an restaurant for a gathering. Ryuan bowed and responded, yes, I understand, little one. End of this chapter.